the Sorcerer of the Celestial Dragon line. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 401 Catacombs. For example, the closest place Allen found was the Saint Innocent Cemetery in Paris. This cemetery is located in the Les Halles district in the center of Paris. Its name comes from the Saint Innocent church next to the cemetery, but now, along with the church, the cemetery has disappeared. The Saint Innocent Cemetery has been in use since the 12th century. In the 18th century, due to overcrowding and plague in the cemetery, the King of France announced on March 10, 1775 that it would be closed in 1780 and emptied in 1786. The bones in the cemetery were then moved to the Eyssore Cemetery in the Montparnasse district. This cemetery was a suburb of Paris at the time and was formerly an underground quarry. In other words, more than a century ago, the Saint Innocent Cemetery had disappeared. And Allen learned that the Saint Innocent Cemetery was notorious in Paris. It used to be the largest and oldest cemetery in Paris. Because of population growth, the original cemetery could no longer meet the demand, and the purpose here began to become collective burial. More than 1,000 bodies were buried in one pit. When one pit was full, another pit was dug. Despite this, there were so many people who died of the plague at that time, that many bodies were thrown directly on the edge of the cemetery. At the same time, this is the largest slum in Paris, and all kinds of dirty and messy environments can be imagined. Nicolas Flamel left many symbols on the arch wall of the fourth tomb chamber of this cemetery. These symbols were recorded by people who studied Nicolas Flamel, and Allen saw them in some materials. The changes in Paris made many of the materials collected by Allen completely useless. Allen needs to collect materials here again in the next period of time. As Nicolas Flamel's hometown, there are many rumors about him here, but many of them have been processed by people, and some are completely forged. Allen needs to find the information he needs from it. Allen found the director of the Paris library at that time, and used a mental suggestion to easily get permission to enter and exit freely. The historical changes of the entire Paris and even Gaul are collected here, and Allen began to screen relevant information here. After spending an extra time, Allen finally found some useful information, such as a large number of symbols left by Nicolas Flamel, and some locations. Allen came to the place d'Enfant Rochereau in the 14th arrondissement of Paris. This is the largest cemetery in Paris and the world. It is also called the Tomb of the Skeletons. It was originally an underground limestone quarry. Later, a plague broke out in Paris, and the death toll continued to rise. The cemetery was seriously insufficient, and a large number of corpses were abandoned in the cemetery. The sanitary environment had deteriorated to the extreme. Finally, people moved the bones buried in all the cemeteries in the city to this place. It was used as a cemetery until 1814. The underground tombs are 200 miles long and contain 6 million human skeletons. Because there are so many skeletons have been built into a wall of skulls. It has now become a museum and tourist center every day. Of course, only about 2 kilometers are open to the public. The underground tombs that people see today have been artistically processed by later generations. They are piled into various shapes by artists, including caves, corridors, and arch bridges composed of skulls, and bone walls made of other human skeletons. Like the famous and intricate underground waterways in Paris, the catacombs are also surrounded by a maze and winding paths. The difference is that this place definitely gives people a gloomy and breathtaking feeling. At this time, Allen was standing at the entrance of this huge cemetery. The first thing he saw when he entered the cemetery was a stone tablet with an inscription written in Latin: "If you insult the dead, you will be punished by heaven and earth." There was also a warning below: "Remember, every day is your doomsday." Allen spiraled down the 130 steps. As he went deeper, the light around him gradually dimmed. Allen clearly felt that the negative energy around him was gradually getting stronger. The interior of the tomb was made of limestone, with a solid and gloomy texture. On one side of the passage was a limestone wall, and on the other side was a wall of the dead made of stacked bones, tibias, and skulls. The width of the passage was only 2 meters and the height was 2 to 3 meters. The gaps in the bone wall were filled with a lot of broken bones, and all the bones were neatly stacked. In the dim light, it extended all the way to the depths of darkness. It's really spooky. Allen walked casually through the sea of bones. The bones here were pieced together into many patterns. Allen also saw some arch bridges built by human skulls. Under the dim light, there was a weird atmosphere. Just across the arch bridge made of human skulls, there was a corridor made of human skulls that was more than 20 meters long. Tens of thousands of skulls were neatly placed into groups, and many skulls still had very obvious scars. Many of these were relics left by various movements in Gaul. It's a bit strange. So many corpses are piled up here. Except for the heavier yin energy, there is no other abnormality. Allen looked at the tomb in front of him. The corpses buried here can be said to be the most Allen has ever seen, but the undead breath he imagined did not appear. You know, even if the undead breath gathered naturally with so many corpses, it is enough to produce several legendary undead creatures. Moreover, Allen did not just collect information in Paris this month. He also discovered many dark creatures, including vampires and werewolves. Allen also found traces of some giant monsters and other dark creatures. It is said that this underground tomb is so large and has a strong negative energy atmosphere. It should be an excellent gathering place for dark creatures, but strangely, no dark creature has been seen here so far. Although this era has experienced 2 industrial revolutions, there are still many dark forces. Allen has received some news that in the mountains of Poland, there have been a series of dismemberment cases. The bodies of the victims were torn into horrible pieces of meat by unknown beasts in the mountains. The local government and the church jointly concealed the news for the sake of social stability, but this was only for ordinary people. It has spread among demon hunters. According to the news from Viken, there are at least 15 adult orcs active there, and many demon hunters have gone to solve it. In Northern Europe, people have found some huge footprints, and many women have disappeared. These missing people have caused panic among local residents. Now it is said that there are very few women going out alone there. However, despite this, the number of missing people is still slowly increasing. In Gaul, tomb robbers appeared in many cemeteries. These tomb robbers dug the bodies out of the tombs and took them away. However, Allen knew that this was just an excuse to deceive ordinary people. Allen went to check and found that those tombs were obviously dug from the inside, and there was a strong smell of the dead around them. Chapter 402 Catacombs 2. Allen was very familiar with that kind of breath. Only the necromancers liked to do this in the cemetery, but it had nothing to do with Allen. With those demon hunters in the church, Allen would not interfere. Allen continued to walk deeper into the cemetery. There were few tourists on the road. It only received 200 tourists a day, and this kind of ghost place was generally visited by few people. From time to time, people with panic expressions hurried past in front of him, and then ran to the exit in a flash, looking scared. But it was no wonder. As the tomb went deeper, the light became dimmer and the yin energy was very heavy. Looking around, there were bones everywhere. This place looked like hell. Passing through a passage, Allen clearly felt that the negative energy aura had increased, and the temperature was low. There seemed to be nothing abnormal around, but there was a feeling of being naked exposed to the ice and snow. Allen realized that the temperature had not actually dropped, but the soul felt a negative energy around, causing an illusion. This place has exceeded the open area of the tomb, and there is no tourist around. Advanced invisibility. A flash of light passed, and Allen's figure disappeared into the catacombs, and even his breath was completely hidden. Francisco, the death aura here is very heavy, which is a bit abnormal. A sturdy man said. Philip, should we notify the bishop and ask him to send more people? Another person walking behind said. The catacombs are too big. It's impossible to catch those rats with just the 2 of us. Francisco, you should know that a lot of things have happened during this period of time. We are seriously short of manpower, and it's impossible to get more people. Okay, but after this mission, I'm going to apply for a vacation. Dealing with these skeletons all day long, I have a rotten smell on my body. I agree with your point of view, but what we need to do now is to survive. Francisco stopped and looked at the darkness ahead with a vigilant face. Finally appeared. These rats, I thought they were going to continue hiding. Seeing Francisco's expression, Philip became serious in an instant, reaching out and pulling out the cross sword at his waist. You God's lackeys, how dare you chase here? Didn't your bishop tell you not to fight with the necromancer in the tomb? A harsh voice like sandpaper rubbing came from the darkness, and a tall and thin man in a black cloak appeared there. But, quickly deal with them. If you delay Lord Andrew's business, watch out for your life. Another gloomy voice came from behind the two. Francisco and Phyllis' faces have become more and more ugly. They are now surrounded by people from front and back. The two were just chasing Bart at first, and chased all the way here. Unexpectedly, there is another necromancer here. The two looked at each other, and saw a trace of worry in each other's eyes, but then nodded, and their eyes became more determined. Sith, I don't need you to command me to do things. Bart obviously didn't like Sith. This action seemed to be the intention of the Andrew they mentioned. You two lackeys, you chased me all the way from Vienna to here, and made me miserable. This time I want your lives. Heretics who blasphemed the rest of the dead, accept God's judgment. Francisco raised the cross sword in his hand and rushed over. As Francisco took action, the skeletons around Bart began to move slowly. This lowest level of undead will always be cannon fodder on the battlefield. Their strength is not even as good as that of an ordinary person. The only advantage is the number. Coupled with the millions of skeletons in the catacombs, it can be said that it is impossible to kill them all, even if two people are exhausted. A white holy light instantly illuminated the dim catacombs. As the holy light appeared, a lot of black air came out of the surrounding skeletons, and then fell down in batches like dominoes. All the skeletons on his charge route were directly swept away. Although the undead wizards have a geographical advantage, it does not mean that they are immortal. In this environment, the undead wizards must be killed as soon as possible, otherwise the endless sea of bones can easily drown the two. Bart muttered something, and his hands drew a few patterns in the air. A cloud of black air spread out from him, covering the skeletons around him. Under the holy light, the black fog sizzled and shrank, but it was never broken. Since the Middle Ages, the church has been fighting with these undead wizards. The church has been suppressing these dark creatures. In the most powerful Middle Ages, these undead wizards did not dare to show up. After the 18th century, with the rise of natural science, the strength of the church began to weaken. These dark creatures that used to hide in the dark corners began to stir again. Both sides were familiar with each other's moves, and the battle became white hot at the beginning. When the black fog dissipated, nearly 100 skeleton soldiers with bone knives in one hand and bone shields in the other hand, with black hair all over their bodies, appeared. Bart then pointed, and the skeleton soldiers immediately raised their swords and rushed towards the two. These skeleton soldiers were not purified after being exposed to the holy light. Although the body kept making a sizzling corrosion sound, they still resisted. The two sides soon came into contact, and the difference in strength was immediately revealed. Francisco slammed into the leading skeleton soldiers with a powerful momentum. The skeleton soldiers were smashed to pieces on the spot, scattered all over the ground, and then crushed by Francisco. Bart didn't care about these skeleton soldiers. After releasing the black mist, he continued to stand there and chanted spells. After fighting with the people of the Holy See so many times, he knew that it was impossible to stop the two knights of the Holy See with just the skeleton soldiers. Although the environment here gave them an advantage, the narrow terrain also limited the use of the human wave tactics. The sea of skeletons could not form a siege at all. Only a few skeleton soldiers at a time were not enough for two people to chop. As Bart muttered, a difficult spell was finally finished. A black mist rose, and then 3 skeleton knights appeared in front of him. Skeleton knights are of medium to high strength among the undead. They are made by undead wizards using secret methods to refine the corpses of humans and horses. Their combat effectiveness is far higher than those of skeleton soldiers. The shiny black bone armor on their bodies makes their defense very high. Even a knight like Francisco has a hard time breaking through the armor. The bone spears in the hands of these skeleton knights have been modified by undead wizards. They are not only hard and sharp, but also have corpse poison. Ordinary people will die if they touch them. They are very difficult to deal with. In addition, they have skeleton war horses, which are much faster than skeleton soldiers. Chapter 403 Catacombs 3. Alan kept going deeper into the underground tomb. At this time, he had already entered the depths of the tomb, and the negative energy around him became more and more dense. At this time, a strong energy fluctuation appeared in front of him, followed by an opposite energy fluctuation. Is this a fight between the necromancers and the people of the church? Allen distinguished the identities of both parties with a little feeling, but he had no intention of going up to help. It seems that the necromancers are quite familiar with this place. Allen watched the two necromancers block the two knights of the church in a passage, trying to wear them out. In this place, they have endless spell-casting materials, and they must be the winners in the end. It's actually standing stack casting, Allen said disdainfully as he watched the two necromancers cast spells. This kind of casting method is only used by wizards who have not been trained in combat casting. This kind of standing stack casting is easily interrupted, and because it cannot move, it will become a target once it encounters a long-range attack. These two knights have solid basic skills and their strength is mediocre, much weaker than Van Helsing. Just as Allen was standing in the dark to evaluate, a huge change suddenly occurred on the battlefield. The two knights who were originally suppressed by the necromancer suddenly took out a crystal bottle from their arms and threw it at the two necromancers. The skeleton guards around the necromancer immediately rushed forward to block it, but the crystal bottle exploded with a loud bang after hitting the ground, and then a sacred breath spread out. Ah! With a piercing scream, the necromancer retreated violently and then ran away without turning his head. A large pit with a diameter of 2 meters was blown out at the center of the explosion, and the surrounding undead creatures were directly swept away. Even the skeleton knights were no exception. What is this? Allen looked at the scene after the explosion with some surprise. The explosion just now was mixed with a strong sacred breath. Allen had seen that breath, which was holy water, but holy water would not explode. The power just now was comparable to a cannonball. Cough cough. A cough came from the smoke. Philly, you should have thrown it farther. I was almost killed by you. Sorry, Francisco, you rushed too fast. I'll be careful next time. Damn it, you still want a next time. But those researchers of the Holy See have finally made a reliable weapon. It's really powerful. By the way, what is this thing called? It seems to be called nitroglycerine holy water bomb. This thing is good. I like it. As the smoke cleared, the two people walked out in a somewhat embarrassed state. We need to leave here as soon as possible. Although we have repelled 2 undead wizards, according to the wizard, there are still many other undead wizards hiding here. Our strength is too weak. We need to report to the Holy See and ask for support. The two did not stay for long. They turned around and left towards the exit without going deeper. Nitroglycerine holy water bomb? Nitroglycerine added to holy water? Allen looked at the two people with a stunned face as they left. For the first time, he was curious about what the Holy See was researching. Allen did not stay for long, but followed the 2 undead wizards. These undead wizards still had the strength to hide their tracks when they escaped. It seemed that the injuries just now were not too serious. Allen, who was not familiar with the roads in the underground tomb, now had a guide, and he continued to go deeper by following the tracks left by the two. With the local snake leading the way, Allen soon came to the depths of the underground tomb. As he continued to go deeper, a large number of forks appeared in the tomb, and the entire tomb was like a crisscrossing maze. Finally, after walking for more than an hour, Allen came to the bottom of the tomb. This is a huge cave, and the surrounding walls are inlaid with star-like dots of light. Tens of thousands of skeleton soldiers and skeleton horses are lined up neatly like an army undergoing inspection. On a platform in the cave, more than a dozen undead wizards wearing black or grey cloaks are sitting around a stone table and arguing fiercely. But, cease, you two didn't complete the task assigned by Lord Andrew, and now you are even more remorseless, and you have made up many excuses for yourself. What holy water bomb? How could there be such a thing? You didn't capture or kill the 2 knights of the church. Once this place is exposed, the church will attack in large numbers. I'm not a match for the church without preparation, an undead wizard said grimly. Don't gloat here. I didn't complete Lord Andrew's task, and went back to apologize to him, but I didn't lie or shirk responsibility. Bart looked at Le coldly and said, the Holy See has developed a holy water bomb, which poses a great threat to us. Several of my skeleton knights were directly purified, and even I was injured. This is a fact. If I hadn't run fast, I might have been left behind by 2 knights of the Holy See. Sith sighed and interrupted Bart's words. Bart is not lying. The Holy See has indeed developed a powerful holy water bomb. We must find a countermeasure. This bomb is very convenient to use. It only needs to be thrown out to cause a violent explosion, and its power is quite amazing. If the number is large enough, we may suffer huge losses. If you don't believe it, you can go to the scene to see if there are any traces of the explosion. Do you think I'm a fool? Les said disdainfully. You made such a big noise just now, and the people from the Holy See were let go by you. Now I'm afraid that the people from the Holy See are ambushing there. I'm not so stupid as to run over and fall into their trap. Bart couldn't help but stand up after hearing Les' words. At this time, the necromancer sitting at the main seat of the stone table said softly, "Bart, sit down." Although the voice was loud, Bart, who was originally angry, did not dare to disobey. He immediately shut up, bowed respectfully, and sat back obediently. You don't have to argue anymore. I know the situation very well. My demon servant just sent a message that there are indeed traces of powerful explosions there, and there is a strong smell of holy water around. It seems that the church has a powerful weapon again. The necromancer paused here, and then continued, we need to figure out the power and use of that bomb and its weaknesses. If we can find a way to make it, it would be even better. We must develop something to fight it. Sith, spread all our spies out. I want to know the specific situation of that thing. Sith stood up, bowed respectfully first, and then said, Lord Andrew, I will definitely dig out the information about this weapon for you. Chapter 404 Catacombs 4. Allen looked at the group of undead wizards with flickering eyes. The strength of these undead wizards was not high. Except for the leader who reached the level of second level wizard, the others were all at the level of first level wizards. Moreover, these wizards did not master many spells, and they could not cast spells in combat. Their bodies were also weak, which was far inferior to the formal wizards in the wizard world. A strictly trained combat wizard could easily eliminate all these first level undead wizards, and even the second level undead wizard might not be the opponent of the combat wizard. If these undead wizards did not summon undead creatures, their combat power would not be strong. Allen then moved his eyes to the group of skeletons. These skeletons were all the lowest level soldiers, and there were the same number of skeleton horses next to them. It seemed that they were preparing to refine skeleton knights. These skeletons were not the defective products in the underground tombs. There were many skeletons in the underground tombs, but because these skeletons had been there for too long, most of them had decayed, and many of them were mixed together, and difficult to distinguish. The ones summoned could only be used as cannon fodder, and the success rate of refining skeleton knights was shockingly low. There are several ways to refine a skeleton knight. One is to directly find a complete knight's corpse and mount and directly summon it. This method has a good success rate, but the raw materials are hard to find, and there are not many qualified knights. Another way is to summon directly from the undead world, but based on the level of those undead wizards, only the leader has reached the level that can be directly summoned. Another method is what the group of undead wizards in front of them are going to do. Find a large number of skeleton warriors and skeleton horses, then build an altar, and then refine the skeleton warriors and skeleton horses, and transform them with the altar to get a skeleton knight. This method has a low threshold, cumbersome procedures, and takes a lot of time. In addition, the transformed skeleton knights are of the lowest level, with limited strength and basically no potential for advancement. Under normal circumstances, the conversion success rate is about 1%, which means that, if all the tens of thousands of skeletons in front of them are converted, about a few hundred skeleton knights can be obtained. This group of undead wizards hiding in the underground of Paris have prepared so many skeleton knights. Allen does not believe that they are peace lovers, but let the Vatican worry about these things. While the necromancers headed by Andrew were discussing underground, the ground became chaotic because of the appearance of the necromancers, and the first to be affected were naturally the clergy of the Holy See in France. Thanks to the famous work Notre Dame de Paris, this church has a very high reputation throughout the world. Notre Dame de Paris, located on a small island in the middle of the Seine River, is the largest, oldest and most artistically accomplished church in Paris, and is almost known to everyone in China. The headquarters of the Holy See staff in Gaul is in this church. Notre Dame de Paris is a church building located on the Isle de la Cité in the center of Paris, Gaul, and is also the cathedral of the Catholic Archdiocese of Paris. Notre Dame was built between 1163 and 1250, spanning nearly a century. It is a Gothic building, and is a very key representative one among the Gothic churches in the Ile-de-France region. The church was built in 1163 by the Archbishop of Paris, Maurice de Sully. The whole church was completed in 1345 after more than 180 years. The front twin towers are about 69 meters high and the rear spire is about 90 meters high. The bell-ringing weirdo in Hugo's novel is talking about this place. At this time, in a secret place in the church, the Carthusian protagonist of the Holy See in Paris was pacing back and forth anxiously, waiting for the report from his subordinates. During this period of time, the Gaul kingdom, which was originally quite peaceful, had frequent incidents, and even the city of Paris, which had always been quiet, had traces of the dead. Francisco and Philip had told him what happened in the Paris catacombs, and in which huge cemetery the necromancer appeared. Has the news not been sent back yet? Bishop Carthusian asked. I'm sorry, Your Excellency, because the workload is too large. Although we have added more people, there is no news. Please give us a little more time. A middle-aged man who looked like a priest said with sweat on his forehead. Go and pray to God. After looking at the priest coldly, Carter finally stopped and returned to his seat. Just as the priest was sweating and waiting anxiously, a figure quickly came into the room. Your Excellency, the people we sent out have returned. What's the news? Carter quickly stood up and walked in front of him. The teams sent to various cemeteries for investigation have brought back their investigation reports. Those cemeteries are now in chaos, with a large number of corpses scattered all over the ground. According to preliminary estimates, more than 10,000 skeletons are missing. And in a corner of the cemetery, we found a tunnel that can only accommodate one person crawling. The tunnel is very deep. For safety reasons, no one has gone down for the time being. More than 10,000 intact skeletons. This news was like a heavy bomb that hit Bishop Carter's heart hard, making his head confused, and he didn't come back to his senses for a long time. At that time, his first reaction was to immediately report the situation to the Vatican and request that someone be sent to investigate immediately. This is an unprecedented event. Nearly 10,000 intact skeletons are missing at one time. Thinking of this, Bishop Carth could not help but secretly curse those former Paris city councillors who decided to bury the skeletons originally scattered throughout the city of Paris. Otherwise, how could the necromancers take away so many skeletons so easily? However, he also understood that it was useless to say anything more. Most of those councillors had responded to the Lord's call. Who knows where they are suffering in hell now? When his mind was a little clearer, he immediately ordered a thorough investigation of the skeletons that were missing in the Paris area in the recent period. He instinctively felt that what happened today was the calm before the storm, and a strong pressure arose spontaneously. Nearly 10,000 intact skeletons. Every time Bishop Carth thought of this, his heart seemed to be ravaged by an invisible hand. He knew very well what kind of storm the necromancers could stir up in Gaul after getting so many skeletons. Whenever he thought about the scene, that one night in the future he would see tens of thousands of skeleton soldiers emerging from the soil, holding bone knives and swords in their hands, and killing the citizens, he could not help but pray devoutly to the Lord. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 405 Runestone. While the necromancers in the Holy See were busy, Allen had already begun searching for clues left by Nicholas Flamel in the underground tomb. Chip. Scan the surrounding environment. As an invisible light wave spread out, a large amount of data passed by Allen's eyes, and a three-dimensional model of the underground tomb appeared in front of Allen. The environment here is full of negative energy. After scanning, Allen found that many places were interfered by some strange energy, and the chip's scanning ability could not scan them. Allen even scanned the nodes of other spaces here. The negative energy here is so dense that it is close to the lower plane. Without alarming the necromancers, Allen began to move to several locations marked by the chip. Soon Allen came to the first area marked by the chip. On the surface, there seemed to be no special place here, but Allen clearly felt that there was something inconsistent with the surroundings. A glimmer of golden light flashed in Allen's eyes, and the real vision was turned on. A large number of abstract and strange symbols appeared on the originally empty rock wall, which looked like graffiti drawn by a naughty child. Scan these symbols on the chip and compare them with those on the notebook. Scan completed. The similarity is 98%. These symbols are exactly the same as those on the notebook. It seems that I have found the right direction. Allen casually broke the protective energy that enveloped this place, snapped his fingers, and a beam of spiritual light shot out. The next moment, the runes on the wall lit up, then slowly moved and merged, and finally a palm-sized white stone separated from the wall. This is a rune stone. The craftsmanship is not bad. Looking at the rune stone in his hand, Allen smiled slightly and put it away. Rune stones are special items produced by engraving runes on a special stone. Another great invention of ancient wizards. Ancient wizards then engraved runes on some stones. There were many of these stones, arranged according to a certain pattern, and the rune stone could activate the rune array, which was equivalent to a portable rune array. Later, some people used rune stones to construct rune barriers. This barrier has good defensive power, and can be used as a protective barrier for some garrisons. However, although this barrier is easy to use, and has good protection, it is easy to be destroyed. As long as an insider destroys a runestone, the defensive power of the entire protective barrier will be greatly reduced. So after experiencing some things, this runestone is basically used as a temporary barrier. Allen put away the runestone and went to the next location. Soon Allen found the runestones one by one at the location marked by the chip. After finding the last runestone, Allen took out all the runestones. There were 13 runestones in total. Coming to an open space in the underground tomb, clearing the skeletons piled up around, Allen began to arrange the runestones one by one in order. According to the information on the notebook, Allen arranged the runestones into a hexagram array, and then placed the largest runestone in the center of the hexagram array, reaching out to take out the staff, and Allen's surging magic power directly poured into the staff, releasing his spiritual power and spreading it around. Allen's spiritual power passed through layers of darkness, then connected to the earth vein energy, guiding the earth vein energy to flow to the hexagram array. The surrounding earth vein energy was drawn by Allen to flow to the hexagram array. As the energy was connected, the hexagram array began to emit starlight. When all the starlight was connected, a dazzling light rose. This energy was instantly stimulated, blooming with dazzling brilliance, dispelling all the darkness and fog surrounding it. Even the skeletons piled up nearby were blown away. The undead wizards not far away felt this powerful force for the first time. These undead wizards looked at each other and were in awe of the powerful and unfamiliar energy. What happened there? How could such a powerful energy fluctuation erupt? Andrew, who was using the altar to transform the skeleton knight, did not look good. Anyone who found a powerful neighbor near his nest would be nervous. Sith, Bart, you two go to that direction to scout. If you run into other people, if you don't want to die, remember to be respectful and try to communicate if possible. At this critical moment, I don't want to cause trouble. Yes, Your Excellency Andrew. The two bowed respectfully and left here quickly. At the same time, the explosion of energy also made the already overwhelmed Holy seem more worried. They sensed the direction of the energy explosion, which was deep in the underground tomb. It seems that we must ask for help from the headquarters. That kind of power is no longer something we can handle. Bishop Carter felt the power of the explosion and his face was gloomy and terrible. Your Excellency, I think we need to be more cautious. That power is not from those undead wizards. I think you should be familiar with the power of undead wizards. Although that power is powerful, it is not the kind of undead wizards that are full of death, corruption and darkness. On the contrary, there is a strong vitality in that power. An old man dressed as a priest standing aside said. Indeed, it seems that things are not as bad as we thought. After carefully sensing the energy, Bishop Carter's heart was relieved. But we can't let our guard down. Francisco, Philly. Bishop Carter said. Your Excellency. Your Excellency. You two are most familiar with the catacombs. This time, you will bring a few more people to the catacombs. I need to know what happened there. I don't want a strong man who can burst out such a powerful force to stand on the opposite side of us. We understand, Your Excellency. The two of them performed a knight's salute and left the hall. Soon a group of people left the church and headed for the entrance of the catacombs. Allen looked at the activated hexagram array and finally breathed a sigh of relief. It looks good. After circling the hexagram array, Allen nodded and said, this should be connected to a different dimension. Could it be that Nicholas Flamel has been living there all the time? Allen identified the function of the rune array. This rune array can open a different dimension, which is equivalent to a spatial coordinate, and this different dimension should be close to this world. Otherwise it would not be reached with such a simple teleportation array. We're already here, so let's go in and take a look. Allen thought about it and made a decision. But before we go in, we still need to make some preparations. Chapter 406 Secret Space. Advanced Mage Armor. Advanced Force Field Protection. Dragon Scale Leather Armor. 3 consecutive flashes of light appeared, and Allen cast 3 protective spells on himself, then stood in the middle of the rune array, and a flash of light flashed in his hand, and the rune array was instantly activated. A dazzling light rose, and Allen's figure disappeared. The light on the rune array slowly weakened and finally disappeared. Allen's eyes went dark, and the next moment the rune array directly broke through the surrounding space, and a stream of energy wrapped Allen into it. Entering the space crack, this energy directly brought Allen to a special space. It was like an egg embedded in the wall of space, with an invisible shell outside to wrap it, and then embedded in the space barrier of the material plane, which maintained a certain connection with the material plane, and was relatively independent. As Allen arrived, the wrapped energy gently touched the eggshell. After the energy emerged into the eggshell, Allen felt a suction force coming to pull him in. Without resisting this suction, Allen entered the eggshell. Allen was prepared and entered the eggshell. A European manor appeared in front of him. The manor was not big, with an area of about 1,500 to 2,000 square meters, but it looked very comfortable. However, Allen did not feel any breath of life. When he entered the manor, there was a flower garden in front of him, but the flower garden had become dilapidated. No one had taken care of it for a long time, and it was overgrown with weeds. He walked into the manor along the stone-paved road. The manor was dilapidated and overgrown with weeds. He gently pushed open a door, and the door hinge made a shrill squeaking sound due to lack of grease maintenance. Allen walked into the room. The decoration of the room was very simple. In the middle of the room hung a huge oil painting of an old man. The old man's mouth was obviously sunken, and it seemed that he had lost all his teeth. The skin was too thin to hold up the body skeleton, and layers of wrinkles appeared. The muscles around the eye sockets were too crowded, forming strange grooves, loosely surrounding the dark yellow pupils. This was completely an old man who was about to die. But Allen recognized it at a glance. It looked exactly like Nicholas Flamel and the materials he collected. There were no other decorations in the room, except some marble statues and some vases. Allen checked it casually, and then walked to the second floor. The second floor was not big. In addition to 2 bedrooms, Allen found the study. The walls of this study were painted with various abstract and strange symbols, which looked very strange. Staring at these symbols for a long time, there would be an illusion that these symbols were moving. There were not many books on the bookshelf. There were about dozens of books scattered here and there. Allen picked them up and looked through them casually. Interestingly, Allen found a book, The Travels of Marco Polo, and some poems on the bookshelf, but there were not many books about alchemy. After checking the bookshelf, Allen picked up a book on the desk and looked through it. This book should not be called a notebook. Looking at the first page of the book, there was a picture of a magic wand being swallowed by a giant snake. Seeing this, Allen's eyes lit up, snapped his fingers, and a stool flew directly over. Allen sat down and began to look through this notebook. At the same time, after Allen left through the rune array, the remote corner of the underground tomb once again welcomed guests. 2 undead wizards in black cloaks approached here cautiously. They were Bart and C's. The two were ordered to come here to explore. Because of the powerful energy that burst out, the two were full of caution. They did not go in directly, but summoned 2 low-level skeleton soldiers, and then released an auxiliary spell to obtain the vision of the skeleton soldiers in the world. Then let the 2 skeleton soldiers go in to investigate, so that even if the skeleton soldiers died, they would only consume a little mental power. However, the vision of the skeletons is very different from that of humans. The life they see in their eyes is a soul fire. Carefully controlling the skeleton soldiers to turn around, they did not find anything valuable, so they walked in. The neatly stacked skeletons in the empty cave were cleared to other places. There was a strange hexagram array on the ground, with 13 glowing stones placed on it. Just as the two were about to go forward to check, a dazzling holy light suddenly shot out from another passage in the tomb. Without time to think, the two of them pushed the skeleton soldiers beside them over at the same time. The skeleton soldiers hit by the holy light were directly knocked out, but the holy light also slowly dissipated. It's you again. After seeing the people coming clearly, Bart's eyes were full of viciousness. You guys, a bunch of rats from the underground. One day I will completely purify you. A figure said. You were lucky last time. I didn't expect you to dare to come here, but since you are here, stay. Bart's harsh and unpleasant voice came over. Hey, who ran away with your tail between your legs last time? A sarcastic voice came. It was Philip. You don't argue with the dead, they won't live long anyway. Seize on the side, pressed Bart's shoulder and said coldly. The two sides were separated by a hexagram array. Although they wanted to kill each other, they did not take action directly, but looked at the runestone in the middle. Sir Francisco, that seems to be a runestone. A young man in a monk's robe came to Francisco and whispered. Runestone? What is that? Francisco asked in a low voice. That thing is something invented by Nicholas Flamel. Is it precious? What is its use? I don't know. But it is very likely related to Nicholas Flamel. Nicholas Flamel, this name is a bit familiar. He is a great alchemist in the 14th century. According to legend, he successfully refined the Philosopher's Stone. What did you say? Philosopher. Aha. Seeing that Francisco was about to shout, the monk was quick to cover his mouth. Aha. Francisco, who reacted, clapped his palms quickly to show that he understood. The monk then let go of his palms. Philosopher's Stone, I think you also know the importance of this thing, so those runestones must be taken. Understood. Francisco nodded and said. By the way, are those runestones strong? I don't know. Why are you asking this? If they are strong, we won't have to worry too much when we start. But what if they are not strong and they break? This is the first time I've seen this too, but you should be careful. If they are broken, how are you going to fix them? Chapter 407 Devil. While the two were talking, Bart and Sith also recognized the runestones. They looked at each other and knew the value of the runestones. Knowing that this was a clue to finding the Philosopher's Stone, the two were determined to get it. They tightened the bone staff in their hands and looked up at the church. As the ancient and obscure syllables were uttered, the surrounding death was surging, the black fog was filled, and a crisp sound of horse hooves came. Dead summoning. Divine Asylum. At the moment of looking at each other, both sides cast spells at the same time. While the necromancer and the people of the church were fighting for the runestones, Allen was sitting leisurely in Nicholas Flamel's study and flipping through the notebook. There was a cup of black tea next to the desk and some fruit snacks next to it. Allen reached out from time to time to pick up a red fruit that looked like a strawberry and ate it, and kept flipping through the notebook in his hand. After a long time, Allen finally slowly closed the book and then took a sip of the black tea next to it. Exhaling a breath, Allen put the notebook away. There are not many things recorded in the notebook. This thing was left here by Nicholas Flamel for the first lucky person who came here. The notebook records the method of making the Philosopher's Stone. In addition, there are some things about Nicholas Flamel. Comparing with the information collected by Allen, he has a clear understanding of Nicholas Flamel. As stated in the notebook, Nicholas Flamel's acquisition of the Book of Jewish Abraham was not a gift from an angel, but it was full of traps. He was not a believer in God. When he got the book, he really thought it was a gift from an angel. However, when he studied more and more deeply, and his strength continued to increase, he found that things were not as simple as he imagined. The angel that appeared in the dream was not a messenger of God, but was probably disguised by other creatures. Allen felt that it was most likely a devil. Only those who live in hell and like to play tricks would do this. In that book, the angel imposed various restrictions on Nicholas Flamel. If he had not noticed and continued to practice according to the book, he might have had his soul taken away by the devil. However, the cautious Nicholas Flamel was more cautious and did not believe it completely. He found a Hebrew scholar and studied together. After a period of time, he obviously realized the problem. The Hebrew scholar had been influenced by the devil. Nicholas Flamel started to practice after many experiments, but what he did not expect was that even with such caution, he was still caught by the devil. However, because of his caution, the devil had little influence on him. After some efforts and paying a price, he successfully got rid of it. As for the Philosopher's Stone, the devil did not deceive him. According to this method, the Philosopher's Stone can indeed be refined. However, if it is refined according to the method given by the devil, it will not be Nicholas Flamel who gets the Philosopher's Stone, but the devil. The Philosopher's Stone is very precious, but it is not easy to refine. Although the devil is powerful and cunning, it is unknown why they cannot refine such things. The Philosopher's Stone contains powerful soul power and life force, which is why it can make people immortal. This kind of thing is also liked by the devil. If there is anyone in the multiverse who has the most souls, besides the god of death, it may be the devil. The devils living in Beta Hell often throw some things into the main material plane in various ways. These things include skills, treasures, and some strange things. These are traps designed by the devil. Once someone gets them, they will practice or use them without careful inspection. In the process of their practice or use, their bond with the devil will also become deeper and deeper. Just like you sign a contract with the devil, once the contract is signed, you can't regret it, but the devil likes to leave a lot of traps on it. For example, the things that look like lace around the contract are actually the devil's words. Once signed, the contract is established, and the devil's collection will have an extra soul. For example, when the devil signs a contract, he will use double layer paper. The words on the surface and the words on the bottom layer are absolutely opposite. What you see is in your favor. It's just that after signing, the top layer is torn off, and the real contract will appear. Also, they will design loopholes in the contract. If you don't find them, the devil can get rid of the restrictions of the contract. So when dealing with creatures like the devil, you must be more careful. But in the same way, if you see through the tricks of these devils and sign a contract that is beneficial to you, then the devil will be unlucky. Although most of them have powerful powers, they prefer to use various conspiracies and tricks, and they like to spend a lot of time corrupting other races, including not only humans, but also elves, dwarves, orcs, including those dark creatures. Most of them have the appearance of gothic gargoyles, which is weird and ugly in the eyes of humans. The ruler of Beta Hell is Asmodeus, an angel created by the gods of order. Of course, he was indeed an angel at the beginning. After experiencing countless wars with demons, these angels were also eroded by the power of demons and turned into dark angels. The originally beautiful appearance became ugly, fangs grew out of the mouth, the tongue became forked, and flames surrounded the body. The gods of order wanted to judge them, but Asmodeus found a treasure book that was beneficial to him in the Code of Order. However, the gods of order found that the holy code of order they had formulated could not refute Asmodeus. The final result was that these dark angels signed a contract with the gods of order and built the Hell of Beta, and those dark angels became the current devils. However, as a price, they need to keep fighting endless bloody battles in the abyss with the devils of the abyss. The devils are masters of playing with souls. They are better at torturing mortals with mental pain, inflicting suffering bit by bit, to grind away the grey shell of the soul, while the demons are a group of rude craftsmen. They like to directly inflict physical pain to obtain souls, and many souls are broken in the process. Sometimes the soul of an ordinary person can also be sharpened into a high quality soul crystal. Usually, the excellent souls in the hands of the devil are always much more than those of the devil. Chapter 408 Philosopher's Stone. Nicholas Flamel's notes recorded that he got rid of the devil's shackles, and then refined the Philosopher's Stone, and opened up a residence here. He even often returned to the material plane to play until he accidentally got the coordinates of another world and then left his own heritage and left this world. Allen put away his notes and searched the entire space but did not find anything else. It seems that Nicholas Flamel took everything away when he left. After finding nothing else, Allen did not stay. He gently stroked the staff in his hand and a crack appeared in the void. Then a flash of light flashed and the crack was stabilized. Allen raised his foot and left this small space. In the wild of Paris, a crack appeared out of thin air, followed by a figure. Chip. Scan the surrounding environment and confirm my location. A flash of light spread instantly and then a lot of information appeared in front of Allen. Outskirts of Paris. It seems that there is no error in the transmission. Allen did not return to the catacombs. Allen did not like the place full of the smell of decaying bones. Now that we have found the method to refine the Philosopher's Stone, let's go back and refine it. But there is one thing we need to do before we go. Allen took out Nicholas Flamel's notebook, took out a stack of paper specially used to record spells, and snapped his fingers. Spell transcription. A quill pen quickly wrote on the paper, and soon a thick notebook was completely copied down. The words Philosopher's Stone were written on the cover, and then a flash of inspiration flashed, and the paper quickly integrated together, turning into a beautiful book. Not bad. Allen nodded with satisfaction, and put away the copied book. Identifying the direction, a flash of inspiration flashed away. In Gaul, in a somewhat shabby bookstore, Allen casually threw the notebook on the bookshelf. Nicholas Flamel said in the notebook that this was a legacy left for future generations, so Allen naturally had no reason to take it away. He was not a native of this world, so he could just copy a copy. As for who this notebook fell to the ground and fell into, whether this person was good or bad, it all depended on his luck. After finishing this, Allen did not stay any longer and returned directly to Transylvania, Romania. The stitched monster that was resurrected by the Philosopher's Stone was still imprisoned by Allen in the frozen castle. He was going to extract the Philosopher's Stone from the body of the newly stitched monster. Although the Philosopher's Stone made by Nicholas Flamel also has many magical powers, it is still a little different from the Philosopher's Stone recorded in the wizarding world. However, this level can be barely used, and it can be upgraded after more complete knowledge is obtained in the future. Frozen Castle. Everything is the same as when Allen left. This place has been transformed into an alchemy laboratory by Allen. The closed environment ensures that he will not be disturbed. During the time Allen was away, some of the technologies that Allen gave to the Vican family have been learned by them, and factories have been built. These factories include cigarette factories, sugar factories, glass factories, and even a small steel factory. Although the technology is not advanced, it is sufficient for use at this time. The profits earned are divided equally between the two parties, but Allen's part is directly used to purchase the necessary experimental materials. The most profitable one should be the cigarette factory. The tobacco used was not special, but Allen made some genetic modifications to the tobacco so that they had the same substance as narcotics and had a certain degree of addictiveness. Allen also added filters to it. These designs made the cigarettes produced in Transylvania City quickly gain a lot of popularity. As for what substances were illegal to add, even opium was legal during this period, let alone this kind of thing. Even in modern times, narcotics are not classified as drugs in many countries, and in this world that has just entered the 19th century, there are no regulations about it at all. He lifted the stitched monster out of the prison, placed it on the laboratory table that had been prepared long ago, and snapped his fingers to cast a sleeping spell to make it fall asleep. Allen then activated the rune array. As the energy of the earth veins was connected, streams of light blue energy were injected into the rune array, and as the energy was injected, the rune array began to operate. Allen waved his staff, and a tongue-twisting and obscure spell was recited. The rune array slowly started, and a red substance full of strange power was slowly extracted from the body of the stitched monster. This substance contained a powerful soul force and life force. As these substances were extracted, the vitality of the stitched corpse in the middle of the rune array continued to weaken, and part of the body began to change. A faint smell of decay began to appear, and it became stronger as time went by. When all the red substances were extracted, the stitched monster had completely turned into a pile of corpses. The stitched monster that was resurrected by the Philosopher's Stone turned into a corpse again. Allen waved his hand, and the pile of smelly corpses was directly burned to ashes. A gust of wind blew away all the ashes and stench. Allen then turned his head to look at the Philosopher's Stone in his hand. This stone was much smaller than the one in Victor's hand, about 1/3 less. After all, it takes a lot of energy to transform a pile of patchwork corpses into life. After placing the Philosopher's Stone back in the rune array, Allen began to take out a large amount of materials. This Philosopher's Stone, which was only the size of a peanut, was too small to be used at all. Allen needed to refine it according to Nicholas Flamel's notes. With the accurate refining method, it was not difficult for Allen to refine it with his level. After preparing various materials, Allen quickly refined the Philosopher's Stone. This is an egg-sized ruby-shaped stone, which looks very beautiful, but this Philosopher's Stone can only be considered a preliminary completion, because Allen has not yet loaded it with spell effects. After this Philosopher's Stone is integrated into the body, it can increase the lifespan by 1,000 years. As an immortal species, his lifespan has become extremely exaggerated after several changes in his body. The divine dragon has a longer lifespan than many demigods. This Philosopher's Stone can only increase some physical fitness now, and the spells and super magic expertise in it require Allen to spend time designing. Because the quality of this Philosopher's Stone is not high, it cannot load legendary meta magic expertise, but it can store a legendary spell. It does not require extra mana consumption when releasing it, and only needs to be activated. However, it needs to be refilled after release. If you do not store legendary spells, you can also store 3 9-ring spells. Chapter 409 Mysterious Shop. The more meta magic feats a legendary spellcaster has, the stronger he will be. Meta magic feats such as legendary combat casting, legendary spell enhancement, legendary spell instant, legendary spell extreme effect, legendary spell penetration, legendary spell upgrade, legendary spell expansion, etc. are all must-haves. There are also some rare spell feats that need to be explored by yourself. These spell feats take a lot of time to master, as well as spell counter, spell material exemption, spell focus, etc. A powerful legendary spellcaster needs to master a large number of feats. After refining the Philosopher's Stone, Allen did not stay here any longer. He planned to stroll around this world and meet some scientists, especially some modern physicists. There were many outstanding physicists in this period, and he planned to discuss with these people. The research on element furnaces has many similarities with nuclear physics. Now the element furnace has reached a bottleneck. If this bottleneck is broken, I believe that the real element furnace will be manufactured soon. By then, the last obstacle to building a floating city will be completely cleared. And maybe with Allen's participation in the discussion, nuclear weapons in this world will be developed much earlier, but we don't know what will happen at that time. However, most of the scientists who will shine in the future are now emerging, far from the level of later generations. Albert Einstein has just joined the Swiss nationality, and you can never imagine that his first doctorate degree is in philosophy. The most famous person in this period should be Marie Curie. Allen got the news not long ago that she discovered a new radioactive element. Allen is going to visit these scientists. Although their research has limited effect on Allen, their thoughts and even opinions are not backward. Sometimes a breakthrough in a technology is a shining point. Starting from Eastern Europe, Allen visited Marie Curie, Niels Bohr, Albert Einstein and finally crossed the English Channel to visit Joseph John Thomson. Allen stayed for at least 1 month, and as long as 3 months on this road, and it took 2 years to finish. After visiting many scientists, Allen got a lot of inspiration, but he did not stop, but crossed the Atlantic to the New World. The most famous scientist on this continent during this period was Nikola Tesla. After defeating Edison's direct current, the alternating current he invented began to be laid on a large scale. At the same time, he had recently received investment from Morgan and was confidently preparing to build the Wardenclyffe Tower, also known as the Tesla Tower. Allen was going to have a chat with him. After all, he invented the theoretical basis for wireless energy transmission, and even the experiment had been successful. It has to be said that the scientists of this period had fantastic ideas, and the progress of human technology relied on these imaginations that sounded like fantasy. With Allen's communication, the design blueprint of the element furnace became more and more perfect. Many problems had been solved, and the chip had been optimized through tens of thousands of simulation experiments. The first experimental element furnace was already on the agenda. Just as Allen was traveling around the world, Europe became more and more uneasy. A large-scale rat plague broke out throughout Europe. Groups of rats attacked one town after another. A large amount of food was eaten, and the rats also carried a lot of diseases. Many people got sick and died in this rat plague. Some towns have even turned into ghost towns, with no one in the city. The church and governments are now highly nervous. This rat plague is not a natural disaster, but a man-made one, because after the rat plague was suppressed, a large number of corpses were stolen. Allen can even imagine how much disaster will be caused when the skeletons of the undead in Paris rush out of the ground. At that time, I don't know whether the hot weapons mastered by various countries can stop the bone seed tactics. Firearms do not cause much damage to the undead, and are even far inferior to cold weapons. Even the power of bombs is greatly reduced. However, the nitroglycerine holy water bomb developed by the church last time is quite effective. One bomb can clear an area, but the output of holy water is limited. In the New World, Allen also found a lot of dark creatures, the most of which are the vampires. The strength of the church on this continent is seriously insufficient, and the number of dark creatures is even more than that of the Old World. However, the number of demon hunters far exceeds that of the Old World. Allen encountered a lot of demon hunters when traveling here. Most of these demon hunters are just ordinary people. After training, they use silver weapons to deal with those dark creatures. Although silver weapons can hurt or even kill those dark creatures, there are also many demon hunters who died at the hands of dark creatures. Allen made some gadgets casually, for example, enchanting a pair of M1911 automatic pistols. The pistols were blessed with elemental damage, and the bullets fired from the pistols would gain about 20 points of magic damage, equivalent to the effect of a first level spell. Seeing that humans and dark creatures were fighting fiercely, he was ready to add fuel to the fire. He once again came to Nicholas Flamel's space cabin, and then completely transformed it, turning it into a store. He used the materials in his hands to refine a steel golem, used Dracula's soul crystal to create a soul core, and used the activation of the constructed life on this steel golem to turn this constructed puppet into a real life. This steel golem will act as a shopkeeper here to sell goods. As for the goods here, Allen has prepared a lot. Various enchanted firearms. Allen has studied the divine arts of the church during this period. Although he cannot use divine arts, he can still imitate the effects of divine arts with spells. Allen made a large number of enchanted weapons, which can cause great damage to those dark creatures. He also made a lot of things that dark creatures can use, such as bloodstones that can enhance the power of vampires. This bloodstone incorporates the blood essence of some powerful creatures. For vampires, this bloodstone is a great tonic. The skeleton wand is a kind of staff prepared for necromancers, which can improve the number and quality of their summoned undead. In addition to these, Elu also made a lot of magic items. Although these are just gadgets for Allen, they can be said to be artifacts for those dark creatures or demon hunters. After completing these things, Allen created a small element pool in this small space to provide energy for the entire store. Thanks to Silent Zangai, Shenwul, Yzhi Xingchen, and SS1,817,623 SS for their 100 starting coins reward. I have to go to the hospital for dialysis today, so there are only 2 more chapters. Chapter 410 Mysterious Shop 2. Allen couldn't make goods every once in a while, so he planned to make 2 clay golems to make some simple items. Allen implanted a lot of technology into these 2 clay golems, including carving technology, potion technology, rune engraving technology, magic infusion technology, scroll transcription technology, gem processing technology, metal smelting technology, etc. The soul cores of these 2 clay golems were made of high-level soul crystals. Ordinary soul crystals cannot bear so much knowledge. These 2 clay golems can use the energy in the element pool to enchant various items and produce various goods. The goods in this store will be continuously produced. As for some high level items, Allen set the value not low, and it is not easy to exchange them. In this store, you need to pay not money, but soul crystals. Of course, various gems and other resources are also possible. Allen specially prepared a price list for exchange. In the same way, Allen set a powerful barrier in this store to give a surprise to those who can't resist greed and want to take action. After the shop was completed, Allen moved the small space from the plane barrier of the main material plane to the inside of the plane, hiding this space in the space crack. Allen refined 300 special vouchers. The voucher is a round plate with an eye engraved on it. The only function of these vouchers is to be teleported to Allen's shop after activation. After everything was prepared, Allen threw these 300 vouchers all over the world. Paris is a low-level demon hunter. He joined this profession because his family was killed by dark creatures. Killing all dark creatures is his goal. Now he has just killed a blood slave, but his condition is not good. The blood slave's dying counter-attack also made him seriously injured. Yin Hang's blood keeps oozing from his chest. If it is not treated, he will die of excessive blood loss in a few minutes. He struggled to bandage the wound, but several efforts failed. Just when he was about to fall into despair, a flashing thing fell from the sky and hit him directly. It was a strange round plate with a mysterious luster. Paris picked it up involuntarily. The moment he touched the sign, the blood on his hand was absorbed by the sign. Then, a spiritual light rose from the round sign, and Paris disappeared. The next moment, a figure appeared in the mysterious shop. Paris looked at the scene in front of him with a shocked face, and at this time a cold mechanical voice woke him up. "Welcome to the mysterious shop. Do you need to buy anything?" Paris turned his head and saw a strange iron man standing behind him, struggling to draw his gun. "You are seriously injured. If you don't get treatment as soon as possible, you will fall into a coma in 3 minutes and 11 seconds and die from excessive blood loss in 17 minutes. Save me, sir. This is not a hospital. I'm sorry, I can't save you. Excuse me, is there anything you need to buy? There are hemostatic drugs for sale here. Only one bottle can completely cure your injuries. How much is it? I'll buy it." Paris, who was in a weak state, said directly without thinking too much. "A small piece of soul crystal, or other materials of equal value." Soul crystal? What is that? Soul crystal is a crystal formed by the soul energy after the death of intelligent life. The strange iron man took out a grey crystal the size of a fingernail. "I don't have such a thing. Can you sell me the hemostatic medicine first, and then I will find it for you." The rules of the mysterious shop. Article 7. Prohibit anyone from buying on credit for any reason. Hearing the cold words of the Iron Man, Paris's hope sank again. "But as the first customer to come here, you have a reward. You can get an item worth no more than one soul crystal for free." "Excuse me, sir, do you want to use this opportunity?" Yes. Give me a bottle of hemostatic potion." "Okay, please wait." The Iron Man turned around and took a bottle of red potion from the shelf and handed it to Paris. The potion can be applied externally or taken directly. Paris took the potion and drank it in one gulp. Soon, countless tiny granulations of flesh squirmed on the huge wound on his chest that was cut by the blood slave, and soon they tangled together. In a breath, it was completely healed. Except for the difference in color between that piece of skin and the surrounding area, there was no difference. Paris looked at the hemostatic potion in his hand with a shocked face. This. Are you satisfied with the effect of the potion? There are other products for sale here." Hearing the voice of the Iron Man, Paris quickly looked up at the products. He was now full of curiosity about those products. "This is the Azuros." Seeing Paris's gaze, the Iron Man took a revolver off the shelf. This Azuros can hold 6 rounds. It can be loaded with ordinary bullets, which have a nice effect after firing. It can also be loaded with rune bullets. Paris looked at the pistol, that looked like a work of art. The pistol handle was carved from ivory, which was very comfortable to hold. There was also a rose pattern carved on the ivory. The gun body was slender and elegant, with some strange patterns engraved on it. The barrel was about 140 millimeters long and the weight was appropriate. Paris fell in love with this pistol at first sight. "How much is this pistol?" 150 low-level soul crystals, or other items of equal value. This is the exchange list. Iron Man handed over a form. Paris looked down and saw that it said 1 low level soul crystal equals 50 gold equals 5 kilograms silver. Seeing the price exchange list, Paris felt a toothache. With his income, he could not afford such a thing. He had to put it back reluctantly. Do you want to try out the weapon? Okay. Although he couldn't afford it, Paris decided to give it a try. He followed the Iron Man to a room next door, which was a training ground with an area of several hundred square meters. When he came to the shooting area, the targets were already set up. Paris took out a few bullets and put them into the blue rose. After feeling it, he fired directly at the target. Bang! A weak energy wave flashed, and the bullet hit the target directly. A layer of frost quickly covered the target. Then the frost shattered, and the target shattered directly to the ground. Seeing the power of this pistol, Paris was even more shocked, and then he couldn't let it go. After returning from the training ground, Paris reluctantly returned the gun and began to look at other products on the shelf. Chapter 411 Mysterious Shop 3. Life Potion can increase lifespan by 10 years. Strength Potion can permanently increase a small amount of strength. Rage Potion greatly improves the user's physical attributes in a short period of time. The effect lasts for 3 minutes. Cannot be used continuously, and will fall into a state of weakness for a period of time after use. Glacier Longsword, sharp, can cause weak freezing damage when used. Venomous Fangs, dagger, armor piercing, with poison damage. Skeleton Staff, the number of summoned undead +2, summoned creature strength +1. Frostmourne, longsword, sharp, with ice damage. Being injured by the weapon will be cursed. Nitroglycerine Holy Water Bomb. After use, it will cause 1 explosion damage and 1 holy damage to dark creatures within a radius of 5 meters. Enchanted Ammunition can be loaded into ordinary firearms and will cause faint elemental damage after hitting the target. Fireball Spindle. After use, it will summon 3 fireballs to attack the enemy. Seeing the dazzling array of goods, Paris' eyes flickered repeatedly and finally shook his head helplessly. Excuse me, how do I get soul crystals? Sir, soul crystals are condensed after killing powerful creatures and extracting their soul power, or they will also drop after killing ghost-like creatures. The voucher in your hand can be collected and condensed into low-level soul crystals. If you want to come here, you only need to activate the voucher in your hand. Please note that this voucher only has 3 trading permissions, and it will be directly taken back after 3 times. Since when? A legend has been circulating throughout the world. There is a mysterious store hidden in this world. No one knows who the owner of the store is, and no one knows where the store is, but this store attracts countless people. There are all kinds of items in the store that only exist in legends. Powerful weapons, magical potions, water of life that can prolong life, and countless items that you can't even imagine. It is said that this mysterious store has a powerful force, and no one dares to take action here. It is said that those who take action in the store have their souls directly extracted. If you want to enter the store, you need to get a voucher, and only those who have the voucher can enter. Alan knew everything that happened in the mysterious shop. After seeing many commodities, some people with different thoughts would not go to buy soul crystals. People who were used to the law of the jungle would directly start to rob. Of course, the fate of these people would be very miserable. The steel golem was not a showpiece. Alan loaded a lot of combat skills for it, such as slashing, spinning, defending, and attacking, charging, gas attack, acid attack, and many other attack methods. All those who tried to rob were killed. Their only value was to provide Alan with some soul crystals. There were also some smarter ones who wanted to attack with these powerful weapons while trying out the weapons. However, they did not know that under the cover of the barrier, any of their attacks would be in vain. After killing hundreds of people who wanted to rob the mysterious shop, those who came later finally realized that it would not work, and then they could only honestly exchange soul crystals or other resources. Bang, bang, bang. A series of gunshots came from the bar, followed by the sound of broken glass and people's screams. Are you ready, you damn bugs? Paris appeared in the bar with a gun in one hand and a sword in the other. The bodies of the 3 vampires hit by the bullets were frozen, and then directly shattered into ice cubes. This kind of magic damage, their proud regeneration ability did not have any effect at all. Ice Gun Hunter. Seeing the miserable state of their companions, the remaining vampires screamed and took out their weapons to attack. Seeing the vampires rushing up, Paris fired the gun in his hand one after another. Each bullet could kill a vampire, but his pistol only had 6 bullets, and they were soon used up. He's out of bullets, go and kill him. Go. The vampires who had just hidden behind the bunker rushed out one after another. Paris put away his beloved gun, took out a crystal bottle, and threw it directly into the middle of the bar. Boom. Nitroglycerine exploded directly, after being hit violently. The huge roar blew the bar counter directly away. A holy power erupted instantly. All the vampires covered by the explosion screamed and retreated, but it was too late. After being covered by the holy energy, their skin quickly rotted and made a sizzling sound. They screamed and turned into a pile of black skeletons before they took a few steps. Seeing that all the vampires were killed, Paris took out a round card and saw a flash of light. One by one, the twisted souls struggled to escape, but they were destined to be in vain and were soon pulled in by the round card. They are all low-level blood slaves. There is not even a real vampire. Where did these damn bugs hide? Looking at the dozen or so low-level soul crystals he had harvested, Paris cursed a few words and prepared to leave. Pop. Bang bang bang. The door leading to the private room of the bar was suddenly pushed open, and then several gunmen shot at it, but apart from smashing a sofa, there was no gain. As soon as he heard the noise, Paris rolled over and fell to the ground, hiding behind a pillar. When the gunfire stopped, Paris stared at the door that was pushed open and the figures that gradually appeared behind the door with a serious face. When these figures appeared, Paris felt a palpitation, and then he smelled a corrupt and bloody smell. Real vampires are not those low-level blood slaves. Paris stared at the last figure who walked out. This figure had been hiding in the dark. Paris couldn't see his face at all, but the breath locked him tightly. Roar. The 2 blood slaves roared directly, and their bodies grew nearly 10 centimeters taller, and fangs emerged from their mouths. Then they rushed forward under the cover of the 2 gunmen. Paris, who had already changed his bullets, took advantage of the gap. When the bullets stopped, rolled out and shot at the 2 gunmen repeatedly. Bang, bang, bang. The 2 blood slaves were hit directly, and the frost damage carried by the bullets instantly froze them, and then broke them apart. How dare you, lowly human, hurt our great blood race. Paris put away his empty gun, raised his glacier sword and rushed forward. The 2 blood races relied on their sharp teeth and claws, great strength, fast speed and strong recovery ability, and were not afraid of these ordinary swords at all. Seeing that Paris was not using a silver sword, they rushed forward without thinking. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 412 Demon Hunter. Sure. A series of cold lights flashed across the sky, and the arms of 2 blood slaves were directly cut off. The wounds were instantly frozen, and no blood flowed out. Then there was another click, and the blood slave was directly beheaded by a sword. The other blood slave found something wrong, and wanted to escape, but the ice damage made his body stiff. Before he could run 2 steps, Paris, who had caught up with him, stabbed him in the heart with a sword. The stabbed part instantly formed a layer of ice. Paris gently pulled out the sword, and the blood slave's heart had already broken into countless ice chips. You are also considered vampires. You are just some defective products. Pa. A burst of crisp applause came from the passage, and Paris turned his head to look at the figure. You are quite skilled, and your weapon must have come from the mysterious shop. In the dim light, Allen saw the person who was speaking clearly. He was wearing a tuxedo, with an exquisite badge on his left chest, short blonde hair, green eyes, handsome appearance with a hint of evil, pale face, and looked like a middle-aged man who had just recovered from a serious illness, dressed like a typical aristocrat. There was still a scent of perfume on his body, but Paris could distinguish the bloody smell under the perfume. Paris tightened his weapon, and did not speak. He knew the strength of the real vampires, and the speed that humans could not match. Once they find your flaw, they will not hesitate to give you a fatal blow. Since you have the items from the mysterious shop, then the mysterious certificate is also on you. The vampire did not attack immediately, but asked leisurely. It is in my hand. Why, you want it? Yes, as long as you hand over the mysterious certificate to me, I will let you go today, and even give you the first embrace, so that you can become a noble blood clan, not a lowly blood slave. The vampire's eyes burst into a gleam of light when he heard Paris's words. Not enough. If you want the mysterious certificate, just these are not enough. Paris shook his head and said, okay, then what do you want? The vampire showed a look of as expected and said confidently, money, women, or power, or a longer life. All of these are fine, as long as you hand over the mysterious certificate. All of these can be discussed. Can all of these be given to me? Of course. The vampire nodded proudly. But I don't want these. Can I change one? Paris said with a twinkling eye. Change one? What do you want? Hearing Paris' words, the vampire frowned and looked at Paris and said, I want. Paris looked to the side, and the vampire turned his head in confusion following Paris's gaze. I want your life. With a loud shout, Paris raised the blue rose in his hand and shot directly. Bang, bang, bang. The firing pin ignited the primer, the smoke spread, and the bullets with frost damage were shot at the vampire in an instant. At the moment when Paris fired, the vampire's body instantly left a shadow and dodged. The bullet hit the wall behind him, and a layer of frost appeared on the wall. You dare to refuse the kindness of the great Foster. I will suck your blood and turn you into the lowest blood slave, and then forgive your behavior until death. Foster, who dodged the attack, had an extremely hideous face, with sharp canine teeth exposed. A pair of black bat-like wings appeared behind him, bloodshot eyes, and an elongated head, looking like a huge bat. Dirty bug, scum that can only hide in the dark. Paris taunted coldly. You are looking for death. Foster's figure flashed and disappeared in an instant. Paris, who had been nervous, turned his hand back and slashed behind him without even looking. Quick reaction. But, mortals are mortals after all. The voice suddenly came from behind, and Paris even felt a chill on his ears. Without time to think, he rolled over and turned around to strike with a sword, but before he could cut the sword down, his wrist was grabbed by a cold hand. The cold hand was like a pair of pliers, and the pain on his wrist immediately made Paris's hand holding the sword loosen, and the ice river fell directly to the ground. Bang, bang, bang. Without paying attention to his arm, Paris pulled out the blue rose with his left hand, and fired 3 shots at the vampire who was close at hand, instantly firing the remaining 3 bullets in the pistol. Paris knew very well the power of this pistol, and even if a vampire was hit, he would suffer a great loss. But a scene that surprised him appeared. A shield that seemed to be made of blood suddenly appeared in front of the vampire in front of him. The bullet hit the blood shield and froze it, and then the blood shield shattered and turned into ice slag on the ground. The bullet did not cause him any harm. Nice weapon, but it's a pity that I missed. Foster looked at Paris with pride, and then exerted force with his palm. Crack. With a crisp sound, the whole arm was directly broken by the vampire, and the arm was bent at an exaggerated angle. The arm was broken abruptly, and Paris wailed in pain. To be honest, I'm very disappointed in you. What tricks do you have now? If not, then become my blood slave. Hahaha, I'm already looking forward to what you will look like after becoming a blood slave of a demon hunter. Just thinking about it makes me excited. Looking at Paster who kept wailing, Foster laughed wildly, then stretched out his arm and directly grabbed Paris who was rolling on the ground, and opened his terrifying mouth full of fangs to bite him directly. Ah. Damn reptile, dare to hurt the Great Blood Clan. Just as the vampire was about to bite Paris's neck, a mouthful of liquid with a pungent garlic smell was directly spit on the vampire's face. Ordinary garlic cannot kill vampires, but this highly concentrated garlic essence is a poison to vampires. Fortis, who was unprepared, screamed and loosened his arm. The skin stained with garlic essence made a sizzling sound, and a foul smell emanated. Soon his skin began to fester, revealing the dark bones inside. Paris endured the severe pain, grabbed the glacier sword that fell on the ground, and then stabbed the rolling vampire continuously. The place where he was stabbed quickly froze, and finally cut off his ugly head with a sword. The vampire's body twitched a few times and then completely collapsed and then turned directly into a group of rotten skeletons. Pug. Seeing that the vampire was completely dead, Paris kept spitting saliva. The taste of garlic essence made him feel like he was going to die immediately. There was no time to treat the injury. Paris directly grabbed a glass of beer and drank it, and then rinsed his mouth frantically. Chapter 413 Demon Hunter 2. In the black sky, Allen looked at Paris with interest. During this period, he wandered around the world and observed those who got the mysterious certificate. Allen was random when he spread the mysterious certificate around the world. As for who would get it, it all depended on luck. Many people did not have the ability to keep the mysterious certificate when they got it. Especially after the mysterious shop spread, such people exceeded 70% of the total. The mysterious certificate designed by Allen can only be used 3 times. After 3 times, the certificate will be taken back by the mysterious shop and can only be used after recharging. After some people got powerful weapons or other magical items from the mysterious shop, the whole world was completely boiling. Countless necromancers, witches, orcs, demon hunters, vampires and even people from the church began to find ways to get the mysterious certificate. During this period, due to various reasons, the conflicts in the world directly increased by nearly 10 times. Until now, these conflicts have not shown any signs of calming down, but have a tendency to expand. The 300 mysterious certificates are actually a test. Getting a mysterious certificate means good luck, and being able to keep the mysterious certificate in the end means extraordinary strength and wisdom. The people who finally get these mysterious certificates have good strength. Compared with ordinary people, these people are equivalent to the protagonist. Allen is going to choose a few of them. Although soul crystals can be fused, it is only possible for those below the higher level. As for the higher level legendary soul crystals, only legendary strongmen can produce them. It takes higher level soul crystals to build steel golems, and intermediate and primary soul crystals for stone golems and clay golems respectively. These soul crystals are very large in number, but the number will decrease greatly after reaching the higher level. Allen's plan is to cultivate higher level soul crystals in batches. In order to obtain various items, the 300 people who get the mysterious certificates will collect a large number of soul crystals for trading. Allen can obtain low level and intermediate soul crystals at a very low price. At the same time, the strength of these people will continue to increase, and eventually most of their soul strength will reach the level of high level soul crystals. As for legendary soul crystals, they basically do not appear in this world. Allen planned to cultivate a group of leeks and harvest them all at once when he left. This period can be said to be the last outbreak of mysterious power. After this outbreak, the number of various dark creatures, demon hunters, necromancers, and witches will decrease sharply. More importantly, human technology will enter an outbreak, and these mysterious powers will gradually decline. Perhaps when the technological outbreak slows down, various mysterious powers will revive again. Allen's goal is to harvest all the leeks with the best potential in this wave. Below, in the hell bar, Paris, who had vomited all over the floor, finally recovered. The smell of concentrated garlic essence was unbearable for vampires, not to mention humans. Although he used the garlic essence prepared in advance to kill the vampire this time, I believe that garlic essence will become his psychological shadow for a long time. As the first person to enter Allen's mysterious shop, Paris's strength is not high. It can even be said that his strength is the latter among the 300 people, but his luck is the best among the 300 people. When he was about to die from excessive blood loss, he got a mysterious certificate and used various items to escape danger again and again. Paris bit a stick, then straightened his broken arm and fixed it with a wooden board. The muscles on his face twitched violently in pain. Sweat washed away the blood stains on his body. He took out a bottle of healing potion and drank it with his head tilted back. The injuries on his body began to recover quickly. Picking up the weapon, Paris quickly cleaned up the battlefield and left here directly. Flamingo Bar. Pushing open the somewhat shabby door, a burst of noise came out immediately. Now is the busiest time in the bar. Bounty hunters, mercenaries, demon hunters, and even some big thieves will appear here. As an intelligence base, many people buy information here and also sell some contraband. It can be said that this place also takes into account the function of the black market. Many stolen goods or items of unknown origin are also sold here. There is an unspoken rule in the tavern, that is, no fighting. No matter what grudges there are, if you want to resolve them, you must leave the tavern. Paris came to the tavern, ragged and exuding the stench of the sewer. People around him scattered away. The smell of garlic essence lasted for a long time, and it took about a week for the smell to dissipate. He took out the sharp fangs in the package and put them on the table. The bar owner smiled and began to count them. These fangs were the evidence of the demon hunter killing vampires. 44 fangs. It seems that you have killed 11 blood slaves. Huh? No, this is not the fang of the blood slave. The bar owner picked up a sharper fang and looked at Paris in shock. That's the real Blood Clan. Paris took a sip of wine and said lightly. In an instant, the people around him quieted down, and the noisy bar became so noisy that you could hear a pin drop. Everyone's eyes fell on the bar owner's hand, and everyone's eyes became extremely hot, and there was a hint of jealousy and greed in their eyes. They knew very well that a real vampire was not only powerful because they were surrounded by a large number of blood slaves, but also because they were strong and each vampire had considerable wealth. Although the people in the bar were also from the other world, most of them were from the lower class. They were just ordinary people who had undergone rigorous training. They could deal with ordinary blood slaves when they had the right weapons, but they would die if they ran into a vampire. They lived a life full of dangers and pursued money. The bounty for killing a vampire and their own wealth were enough to make them rich. These riches could allow them to live a stable and prosperous life in one place. Only those who had been exposed to the dark side of this world knew how happy it was. Paris, who had climbed up from the bottom, was very clear about the interests involved in the surrounding gazes. If it was before, he would definitely not take it out so carelessly, but chose to take it out when no one else was present. However, for him who had just harvested a mid-level soul crystal and a dozen low-level soul crystals, all this was not a problem. With this harvest plus his previous accumulation, he can now go to the mysterious shop to buy that kind of magical bloodline and possess the powerful strength that surpasses that of mortals. Chapter 414 Demon Hunter 3. Change all for money? Or do you need something else? After checking the fangs, the bar owner looked up and said, 3 units of ammunition, and give me some food. Oh, garlic essence, 3 more. Paris paused when he mentioned the garlic essence. Okay, no problem, but I suggest you go back and take a shower and spray some perfume. The bar owner shrugged and said, ammunition and garlic essence. He reached out and took the ammunition and 3 glass bottles, and Paris put them into his pocket. This is your reward. A bag that was obviously heavy was placed on the bar, and a crisp metal collision sound came from it. When the other people around saw the bag, greed flashed in their eyes. Paris did not take it directly, but looked back at the people around him. His eyes turned, and the others shifted their eyes, and the bar became lively again. He picked up the bag casually, and put it in the backpack behind him. Several eyes in the dark pressed against the bag tightly. After collecting the things, Paris pulled over a plate of barbecue and started to eat. As a demon hunter who climbed up from the bottom, he knew the nature or rules of demon hunters very well. That is, the strong are respected. In the other world, various dark creatures are active, and these dark creatures are hidden in the crowd. Although the armies of various governments are powerful, they can't handle such things at all, so they can only rely on the church and demon hunters. Because the church belongs to religion, since the Middle Ages, when countries got rid of the control of the church and gained greater power, they have been vigilant against the church, so the church has been restricted in many cases. But dark creatures must be dealt with by someone, so the demon hunters who were already weak have become active again. The origin of demon hunters is very complicated, including soldiers, poor people, robbers, and people who joined for various purposes. It can be said that demon hunters are mixed. Here, the law cannot restrain them, and the only rule is strength. Now that Paris has gained some strength, he can be a little presumptuous. After all, he still needs some soul crystals now. If someone voluntarily sends them over, it would be great. There is no shortage of people who want to get something for nothing and take shortcuts. Just after Paris finished eating and left the tavern, at least 3 groups of people followed him out of the bar. Bang! With a gunshot, a body fell down slowly with a thump. In the dark alley, more than 10 figures were lying in a mess, with blood flowing. A faint spiritual light flashed. After a while, a figure in a black windbreaker slowly walked out. 3 low-level soul crystals, a good harvest. Throwing a few grey crystals into his pocket, the figure slowly left the alley. Under the dim light, his shadow was stretched out. After the mysterious credentials appeared for a while, many people found that it was not only dark creatures that could condense soul crystals, but also strong humans. However, compared with dark creatures, the probability of condensing soul crystals by killing humans is much lower, and it is basically difficult for ordinary people to condense. Only demon hunters have a higher probability, so many demon hunters have also turned their attention to demon hunters. However, these actions can only be done in private. Once discovered, they will become public enemies. But passive counterattacks are not included, so some demon hunters deliberately lure others to attack, and then counterattack. Mysterious shop. A flash of light passed by, and a figure appeared in the shop. Welcome to the mysterious shop. Is there anything you need? A mechanical voice sounded, and then a tall figure walked out. I need to buy the blood of the night sun. Paris said directly. The blood of the night sun requires 300 low-level soul crystals, or other resources of equal value. Bang! A backpack was placed directly on the table. This is the material I use to buy the blood of the night sun. Paris opened the backpack directly, revealing the golden light and a large number of soul crystals inside. 1 mid-level soul crystal, 87 low-level soul crystals, 5,733.4 grams of gold. The value is higher than 300 low-level soul crystals. You can buy it. The iron golem picked up the things, then went back to the counter, and took out a bottle of green liquid from the protective cover. The blood of the night child, after implantation, can gain powerful strength, regeneration ability, night vision ability, lifespan twice that of a normal human, can enter a violent state after anger, and is only for human use. This blood of the night child was obtained by Allen after modifying the werewolf blood, which was the blood injected into Vicken at the beginning. Paris reached out to take the light green crystal bottle and saw countless stars twinkling in the solution inside, and the whole potion looked extremely beautiful. How to use this blood? Paris observed the potion for a while and then asked. Don't worry, our store provides free blood implantation service. Customers can make an appointment in advance when they need blood implantation. I need to be implanted immediately. Paris said directly. Okay, please follow me. The iron golem turned and walked towards another door. Pushing open the door, it seemed very empty inside. Paris carefully looked at the surrounding environment. The room was not big, and a large number of strange patterns were outlined on the ground. A rectangular stone platform was placed in the center of the room. Please lie down. The cold mechanical voice interrupted his thoughts. Paris looked at the stone platform hesitantly, and then looked at the iron golem beside him. There was some struggle and hesitation in his eyes, but then he gritted his teeth, and turned over, and lay on the stone platform. As soon as he lay down, the ruby-like eyes of the iron golem suddenly lit up, and then Paris felt a drowsy feeling. Not good. I was ambushed. A warning came to his mind, and a thought arose, but it was too late. Paris fell asleep without any resistance. Just after he fell asleep, a figure appeared in the room quietly. Master. The moment he saw the figure, the iron golem bowed and saluted. You go out. Allen waved his hand, and the crystal bottle flew directly into Allen's hand. The iron golem left the room, and Allen began to implant blood. Allen was already familiar with this kind of experiment. After spending half an hour, he implanted the blood of the Son of Night into Paris' body, snapped his fingers, and the rune array slowly closed. Allen glanced at Paris lying on the stone platform. A strange smile appeared on his lips, and then he disappeared. After Allen left, about 10 minutes later, Paris finally woke up. After waking up, Paris rolled over and rolled to the side of the stone platform, making a defensive posture, but the imagined attack did not appear. After a few seconds, he slowly stood up. Chapter 415 end. No, my power. Paris stood up, feeling the power in his body, as if thinking of something. He took out a dagger and cut his arm. The blood flowed out, and Paris stared at the wound. The wound quickly scabbed and stopped bleeding. After a while, the red blood scab fell gently, revealing the skin underneath. Except for some differences in color, there was no other difference from the skin next to it. Seeing this effect, Paris was delighted and turned to leave the room. Allen not only placed blood that humans can use in the mysterious store, but also placed some other blood potions, aiming at the weaknesses of vampires who are afraid of sunlight, silver garlic, etc. Allen designed a daywalker blood that can make up for those weaknesses of vampires. After using this blood potion, sunlight, silver, and garlic no longer caused fatal damage to him. The Blood Clan who got the news kept collecting various resources to exchange for enough daywalker blood. Allen also had corresponding potions for werewolves. In the following time, Allen began to continuously implant blood for these people or dark creatures. Allen left a backup plan in these bloodline potions. When these people grow up to a sufficient level, it will be Allen's harvest season. After making up for their own weaknesses, the dark world, which was already surging with undercurrents, became even more turbulent. Allen watched these people fighting with interest, and sometimes even helped to add fuel to the flames. The strength of the 300 people who got the mysterious certificate was also rapidly increasing, but the future of these people was already doomed. European countries, Fuso, Southeast Asia, and America have begun to show signs of chaos. After all, when a person's power continues to increase, his desire will become greater and greater, and they are no longer satisfied with their current power and status. Various contradictions began to erupt continuously, and the whole world fell into chaos. Not long after, the war in the inner world broke out completely. This war also affected the governments of various countries. The governments of various countries also had various dirty things. Usually, there was no outbreak, only because of mutual restraint, but under various influences, the war broke out suddenly. The outbreak of the war also caused Allen's income to soar. Although the probability of ordinary human souls condensing soul crystals is very low, the soul crystals produced by the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people are also a huge number. Allen returned to the mysterious shop. During this period, the goods in the mysterious shop were sold very quickly, and a large amount of resources and soul crystals filled this space. With the outbreak of the war, this situation will continue for a while until the war ends. After the calculation of the chip, Allen gained huge benefits in the war. This time, he obtained a large amount of soul crystals, which was enough for Allen to form a golem army. In the following days, Allen did not travel around the world, but returned to the frozen castle for a search. The disturbances from the outside world did not interfere with this place at all. 2 years passed quickly. After 2 years of war, all the participating countries had become exhausted, and Allen harvested a lot of resources. On this day, Allen had just completed an experiment, and suddenly received a message from the mysterious shop that the time for harvest had come. Allen waved his hand and collected the things around him. The next moment, he disappeared. 300 high-level soul crystals have now all grown. In a hidden room in the mysterious shop, Allen looked at the picture that emerged in the air and smiled slightly. These seeds that were planted at the beginning are now mature. Allen waved his hand and shot out a spiritual light, and an altar in the room slowly rose. Connect to the element pool. Open the energy channel. Open the blood altar. As the light blue energy poured in, the surrounding rune array began to emit a faint spiritual light, and the tall altar in the middle began to operate slowly. As the energy continued to flow in, the surrounding spiritual light became brighter and brighter. A beam of light rose from the altar, and then the spiritual light instantly spread and shot out. Gaul, Paris. In a hidden meeting room, vampires, werewolves, witches, necromancers and many other dark creatures were holding a meeting. At this point in the war, both the inner world and the governments of various countries have reached their limits. Everyone understands that the war must end. At this time, several spiritual lights fell from the sky, and after a flash, they sank into the leading figures. While everyone was wondering, several people showed pain on their faces and their bodies twisted, but in the breath, their bodies were like deflated balls, turning into mummies. The faces of the others changed drastically, and before they could react, spiritual lights shot up from the mummies and disappeared without a trace with a touch of blood. At the same time, the same thing was happening all over the world. In Berlin, Prussia, London, England, Rome, Tom, and Fuso, a series of spiritual lights shot up into the sky. At one time, a large number of strong men from all over the world turned into mummies. After all the energy in their bodies was transformed, they disappeared into the sky wrapped with soul crystals. A large number of demon hunters and dark creatures died. The inner world, which had already been injured, was in a slump, and the mysterious power began to withdraw from the stage of history. In a corner of the earth, a mysterious shop appeared from the void. Meteors streaked across the sky, and soul crystals entered the mysterious shop, and then appeared in front of Allen. Seeing the 300 high-level soul crystals, Allen nodded with satisfaction, snapped his fingers, and all the soul crystals were directly received into his dimensional space. More than 300 high-level soul crystals, tens of thousands of intermediate soul crystals, and various resources. This harvest is enough to make a fortune. Allen checked the various resources that he couldn't put down, and his heart was full of joy. But this wave of looting is a bit ruthless. It will take at least several decades for this world to recover. But you will have to fight 2 world wars without me anyway. When the ruins are destroyed, you still need to rebuild. It's better for me to loot directly. At least the resources are not wasted. I have stayed in this world for a long time. Now it's time to leave. Allen waved his hand to open the dimensional space and put a lot of resources in it. As for the mysterious store, Allen did not plan to take it away. It is not difficult for legendary wizards to open up space, and this kind of small space is even simpler. And those dwarves, although they are a bit ugly, they are loyal and hardworking. They can be used as magic servants in mining. Besides, the construction of the floating city requires a lot of manpower, and there are not many such good laborers. Allen used the life hiding technique on these dwarves to put them into a state of suspended animation, and then put them into the space. After collecting everything, Allen opened the system interface, and left this world the next moment. Chapter 416 Raw Materials Workshop. Southeast Coast, 9 Rings Tower, Astrology Observatory. A flash of light flashed, and Allen's figure appeared. The moist sea breeze brought a slight salty taste. This period is the rainy season of the Salt Islands. When Allen appeared here, the figure of the mermaid maid Selina soon appeared. Master. The mermaid Selina was dressed coolly, wearing a gauze, colorful shells on her chest, a beautiful fishtail skirt on her lower body, and a head of golden wavy hair, which set off her jade-like skin, and looked a different kind of beauty. Selina, is there anything going on in the wizard tower during this period? Allen stretched out his hand to hold Selina's soft waist, and his figure flashed and lay on the sofa next to him. Master, the wizard tower has been running well during this period, but Sir William looked for you some time ago, and the 5 Rings Tower also sent a message hoping that you would come out of seclusion and go there. Selina stretched out her hand and gently massaged Allen. Well, I know. Allen closed his eyes to make his posture more comfortable, and then continued. Where's Biss? Why can't I see her? Sister Biss went to Callan City. During this period, Sister Biss needs to inspect the factories under the wizard tower. Selina's pleasant voice sounded. There are many factories in Callan City that were opened by the wizard tower and Count Anthony. The various items produced by these factories were sold to the mainland to earn a lot of wealth, and then various resources were purchased and transported back to the wizard tower. The construction of a floating city requires a lot of resources. Biss would inspect those factories every once in a while. Oh, by the way, I brought back a group of magic servants this time. They are very good miners and laborers. I will hand them over to you for management. How is the preparation work for the 4th phase of the wizard tower going? The construction of the floating city also needs to start preparations. Allen took Selina to the outside of the wizard tower and snapped his fingers. Accompanied by a spell of light, a large number of dwarfs appeared here. Dwarfs? That's not right. Selina was stunned for a moment, then turned to look at Allen with some confusion. Ailu smiled slightly and waved his hand to remove the effect of the hidden life spell. Wake up. As Allen's voice fell, the dwarves turned over and sat up one by one. They looked around in confusion, then stood up and saluted Allen and said, Master, what do you want? Selina, these are dwarves. Although they look a little ugly, they are loyal and hardworking. They will be managed by you in the future. Allen stretched out his hand to rub the mermaid's golden hair and then said to the dwarves, From now on, you will follow Selena's instructions to work. Do you understand? Yes, master. Okay, you go to that place to build your own residence first. Allen pointed to an open space near the wizard tower and said. Then he took Selena away. After taking the time to send a message to the academy and William, Allen began to build the wizard tower. This time, a large number of soul crystals were harvested, and so many soul crystals needed to be transformed into strength as soon as possible. Allen was going to put the golem core on the agenda, but the golem core needed to build a golem factory first. Allen didn't want to make all the golems by himself, so building a golem factory was the best choice. Allen was going to use obsidian golems as the main force of the golem core. After all, he had a limited number of high-level soul crystals. He got more than 300 from the last world, plus the previous accumulation. Allen now had more than 500 high-level soul crystals. He could make 500 steel golems. He was going to use more than 10,000 mid-level soul crystals to build obsidian golems. As the most powerful golem among the rock golems, the combat power of the obsidian golem was very close to that of the steel golem, and it was slightly better in terms of spell resistance. The clay golems would act as producers in the golem factory. Allen needed to instill skills, carving techniques, forging techniques, rune techniques, smelting techniques, and more than a dozen other techniques into these clay golems. All the golems needed to be divided into parts, and then produced on an assembly line, and then transported to the equipment workshop for assembly. Obsidian needs a fixed source. Allen has already thought about it. There is a volcano in his demi-plane, which is already controlled by magma element. At the same time, the heart of the stone giant is also placed there, which can stably produce various resources: obsidian, gold, silver, copper, iron, tungsten, lead, tin and other metals, as well as various gems. Although the output is not high now, their output will gradually increase over time. The factory is built here, with sufficient raw materials, and the energy of the earth veins here is active. The energy problem of the golem factory built here is also easy to solve, and no additional connection with the floating tower is required. The raw material workshop needs to be built as soon as possible, and the construction of the floating city also requires a large amount of obsidian. Allen transferred a team of clay golems built before, as well as a steel golem. Chip. Transmit the design drawings of the golem factory to the tower spirit. Tower Spirit number 1, retrieve the design drawings of the raw material workshop and load the production operation procedures of the raw material workshop to this steel golem. The task has been established and started loading. It is expected to take 3 minutes. On the astronomical table, a spiritual light shot out from the pale golden central crystal and shone on the soul core of the steel golem. 3 minutes later, all the information of the raw material workshop was recorded in the soul core of the steel golem. Load the production process for these clay golems. Another spiritual light enveloped the dozen golems, and the production information was injected into the soul core of the golems. Even if there was no one to manage them in the future, they would carry out the work that had been designed, taking various raw materials from the volcano and piling them up at the designated location of the raw material workshop. They would always maintain the normal operation here. As for the steel golems, they would serve as maintenance and security. Allen's order to them was to protect this place and expel and kill all invaders. At the same time, they had all the information of the entire raw material workshop. After the raw material workshop was damaged, they would repair and rebuild it. With a wave of his hand, he collected the golem puppets. The next moment, Allen appeared at the crater of the demi-plane. He took out his staff and waved it gently. The terrain around the volcano began to change slowly. He waved his hand to release the clay golem and the steel golem. With a flash of inspiration, the golems began to build a raw material workshop. Allen came to the volcanic magma and began to set up various pipelines. The magma needed to be connected to the raw material workshop. It also needed to be connected to the water element plane, or the ocean. A cooling workshop needed to be built here to cool the magma. Chapter 417 Golem Factory. In the middle of the cooling pool is a large rune array, which is densely engraved with runes, forming a huge rune array. 13 energy crystals are suspended in the air, and the converted raw materials will be separated into categories on several operating tables. Then they will be transported to the raw material warehouse by conveyor belts. Allen commanded several golem puppets to build the raw material factory. It took 3 full days to complete a factory full of futuristic atmosphere. After scanning the entire factory with a chip, Allen activated the raw material workshop after there was no problem. A dazzling aura flashed, and the entire raw material workshop shook slightly. The gate connecting the magma channel opened instantly, and the underground magma with a temperature of more than 1300 degrees Celsius entered the raw material workshop along the pipeline. The scorching magma was viscous and entered the first rune array along the pipeline. Accompanied by a light blue aura, the rune array began to operate, and the magma slowly flowed through the rune array. As the rune array operated, some substances in the magma began to be separated. After separation, the magma enters the next rune array. As the magma slowly moves forward, the rune arrays begin to run continuously, and the clay golems also begin to work. The various metal raw materials separated from the magma enter the cooling pool one after another, and are transported to the raw material warehouse after cooling. After the magma is separated by layers of rune arrays, it flows into the cooling pool in the middle after the last filtering process. A large amount of water vapor rises, and then is blown away directly by the wind element. The temperature of the magma drops rapidly, and then cools and condenses. Obsidian begins to form continuously. Gold, 107 grams. Silver, 528.3 grams. Copper, 37.8 kilograms. Iron obsidian. Allen began to check along the assembly line. The proportion of various materials produced by the raw material factory is not stable, and it can only produce most of the ordinary materials. Some materials need to be optimized and upgraded to produce, but that is a matter for the future. Now this raw material workshop is already very good. At least it can support the needs of a golem factory. Allen was very satisfied to see the well-running raw material workshop, but this did not mean the end. The workshop's defense force had not yet been activated. Allen took out a gem. The gem was round, and there was something in the center that looked like a pupil. This was the eye stalk of the main eye of the eye demon that Allen bought on the 5 Rings platform. After the eye demon died, the main eye was dug out, and then the reconnaissance eye was made using special techniques. It was blessed with several reconnaissance spells, and had real visual effects. It could see through stealth, invisibility, illusions, and even some spells that traveled through different planes. Allen placed it on the top of the center of the entire raw material workshop. As the energy channel was connected, the entire reconnaissance eye emitted a soft light, providing lighting for the raw material workshop. Allen disguised this reconnaissance eye as a lighting source to monitor the entire workshop around the clock. The iron golem has also been activated. Allen designed a patrol route. It will patrol back and forth in the raw material workshop. Its protection range is only as large as the raw material workshop. It will not attack, as long as you do not enter the workshop. The Iron Golem and the Eye of Reconnaissance share the same field of vision. Therefore, although the patrol route of the Iron Golem is fixed, it will know it at the first time if someone invades. After inputting the Defense Guard command into the Iron Golem, it is activated. As 2 red lights light up, the Iron Golem in front of him begins to enter the running state. After activating the defense, the entire raw material workshop is finally completed. Next, it is necessary to assemble an obsidian golem production line. The obsidian golem is a kind of stone golem. The craftsmanship of this golem is not complicated. Allen has divided the obsidian golem into various standard parts and implemented standardized production. First of all, the various parts of the obsidian golem need to be carved. This part was previously entrusted to the carving masters of Carlin City. Those people's carving skills have reached the master level. The carving skills of the clay golem are naturally not as good as this, but carving these golems is enough. Allen is not building a work of art statue, so he does not need to pursue such high requirements. The obsidian golem is divided into several parts. After carving, runes need to be engraved. This step requires knowledge of rune engraving technology. Allen used a high-level soul crystal to create a high-precision rune engraving mechanical arm. This is a construct puppet that looks like a spider. With 8 mechanical arms, runes can be engraved at all angles, and the speed is very fast. Allen made 6 such mechanical arms. After calculating the time, it only takes 3 minutes for an obsidian golem to complete the rune engraving. After the construction of each part is completed, all the parts need to be assembled. The assembly workshop needs several auxiliary golems to cooperate with the assembly line to complete it. After assembly, the obsidian golem needs the last step, activating the core. This step requires the wizard to do it himself, but Allen is designing a legendary construct and then casts spells on behalf of the wizard. However, there is no suitable soul crystal yet, so this part can only be done by the wizard. The mermaid maids of Allen's have now reached the lowest level of formal wizards, and the strongest Selena is already a second level wizard. They are competent for this kind of spell, to activate the constructed golem. So just leave it to them. More than 30 mermaids come 2 or 3 a day, and they can complete it by assigning the order. After all, the spells here rely on the element pool. It took a month for Allen to finally build the other workshops and pass the test. Now it is necessary to connect all the workshops and then start from the raw material workshop to the last activation workshop and complete a set of processes. If successful, then Allen's first golem factory will be established. With a nervous mood, Allen cancelled the closure procedures of each workshop. With a ray of spiritual light rising, the entire golem factory began to operate. The hot magma slowly flowed into the raw material workshop, and various raw materials began to decompose continuously. Finally, pieces of obsidian were generated. The obsidian entered the carving workshop through the conveyor belt, and the clay golem that had been prepared long ago began to carve the obsidian. Pieces of obsidian were carved into standard parts, and then followed the conveyor belt to the rune workshop. The mechanical arms in the rune workshop were activated, and the 8 arms danced quickly, and accurately engraving the designed rune lines one by one. After the rune engraving was completed, the parts were sent to the assembly workshop. Chapter 418 Golem Factory 2. In the assembly workshop, the clay golems that have already started to operate are assembling various parts according to the process requirements. All the steps have strict requirements. As time goes by, one obsidian golem after another is completed quickly. Finally, the assembled obsidian golems come down from the assembly line and are neatly arranged in a row. Allen took out the staff, and a ray of light rose. The soul crystals of these puppet golems were activated by Allen, and one obsidian golem after another was finally completed. Master, go to the gathering place by yourself and wait for Tower Spirit number 1 to distribute. Allen waved his hand and said, then began to check the data collected and sorted by the chip. A large amount of data has been calculated, and the chip has presented the sorted data. Obsidian golem production line, raw material workshop, carving workshop, rune engraving workshop, assembly workshop, activation workshop, raw material workshop. 30 tons of obsidian are produced every day. 10.37 kilograms of gold. 1.073 tons of silver. 11.375 tons of iron, copper, carving workshop. 13 tons of obsidian can be carved every day, with a yield rate of 91.7%. Rune engraving workshop. 10.2 tons of rune engraving can be completed every day, with a yield rate of 99.2%. Assembly workshop. 10 obsidian golems are assembled every day, with a yield rate of 98.4%. Activation workshop. The obsidian production line can build 10 obsidian golems every day. Suggestion: each workshop should add a self-inspection system to conduct self-inspection of production and reduce the occurrence of defective products. The coordination between workshops needs to be further optimized, and the optimization plan is as follows. Seeing the statistical data of the chip, Allen began to make some adjustments to the golem production line. Although each workshop has been operating well, there are still some problems in the coordination between each other, and Allen needs to make some adjustments himself. It would be nice if there was a tower spirit to manage it. Allen sighed. High-level tower spirits must have legendary soul crystals. Although the tower spirits in the wizard tower are powerful enough, they cannot manage across the demi-plane. So a tower spirit is also needed to manage the demi-plane. We can produce 10 obsidian golems a day, which means 300 a month. If everything goes well, we can produce more than 10,000 obsidian golems a year. The quantity is enough. Let's produce 10,000, and the golem production line needs to be maintained regularly, otherwise the yield will decrease. Allen tested some production lines and nodded with satisfaction, arranged 2 maids to patrol here every day and activate the stone golems. After completion, the obsidian golems will go directly to the wizard tower to accept the command of the tower spirit. By the way, we also need to build an element pool here. The efficiency of the golem factory is a bit high. If we only rely on the energy supply in the volcano, it will affect the output of raw materials. The number of obsidian golems is enough, but the number of iron golems and legendary golems is still too small. Obsidian golems are okay for dealing with cannon fodder and low-level demons among the miscellaneous soldiers, but higher-level demons are very difficult. We still need iron golems and legendary golems. Damn, I have to collect high-level and legendary soul crystals again. The most of these things are still in the hands of the devil. The Tebas world has been entangled with the abyss for so long. They should have a lot of high-level soul crystals and legendary soul crystals in their hands. You can buy some from them. No, I'm helping them. Why should I spend money to buy them? Let them support me. Yes, let's do it. Next time you see William, tell him directly, and then let him communicate with the Arcane Council of Tebas. By the way, the element furnace is almost completed, and the next step is to manufacture the element furnace. The arcane city of Tebas has been built long ago, and only this thing is missing. But we still need to blackmail them. No, let them support some rare materials. Allen was thinking about how to get benefits from the Arcane Council of Tebas. No, to help them fight against the abyss. Yes, I'm such a noble person. A month passed in the blink of an eye. The 4th phase of Allen's floating city project is in full swing. A large number of dwarves worked diligently under the command of the mermaid maid. After this period of debugging, the obsidian golem factory was finally completed. The entire factory ran smoothly, and the yield rate was further improved. After seeing that the obsidian golem factory was on track, Allen began to continue researching the elemental furnace. The elemental furnace was now nearing completion. After the theory was perfected, various difficulties were overcome one by one, and the reappearance of the elemental furnace had entered the final stage. The floating city is no longer just a legend. Wizard Continent Goth Institute. A high-level meeting is in progress. The envoy sent by the Five Rings Tower, the Northland Witch, and the Wizard Alliance came here with Sir William. Their purpose is very simple, which is to bring this first-class wizard organization in the west of the Wizard Continent closer to the Alliance. As the Goth Institute in the west of the Wizard Continent, since the rise of the Celts 200 years ago, the strength of the entire institute has been steadily improving. After the opening of the Elemental Tide, it was the first batch of Alfred and others to advance to become legendary wizards. Now the strength of the Goth Institute is already the strongest institute in this area. As long as the Five Rings Tower and the others can bring the Goth Institute closer, then other small and medium-sized wizard organizations will not be a problem. Yes, the current situation does not seem to be going well. So your 3 academies have agreed to help the Tebas world fight against the abyss. A wizard wearing a red wizard robe and a crow badge of the Goth Academy on his chest asked. The abyss is our common enemy, and we have reached an alliance. The messenger of the Five Rings Tower said. Then what will our Goth Institute get after joining, and whose command will this organization obey? You will get the knowledge we share, but this requires you to share some unique knowledge as well. In this organization, everyone is equal, and there is no such thing as obeying anyone's command. Each of our wizarding organizations needs to select one person to join a temporary parliament, and this temporary parliament is the supreme commander of the alliance. In that case, we need to exchange our own knowledge with you, and also obey the command of the parliament. I'm sorry, we need to think about it, and then tell you our decision. Fighting the abyss is something we all have to face. I don't understand why you are procrastinating, and knowledge sharing only requires you to contribute a part of it. Our Tebas world has already provided a lot of knowledge as a gift for your joining. This is not only to save Tebas, but also to save you. I still hope you can seriously consider it, William said with a serious expression. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. we cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 419 Elemental Furnace. The wizard looked up at the figure sitting in the main seat. The man had a high nose and deep eyes, and his aura was profound and majestic. He sat quietly on the chair, supporting his head with one hand, as if thinking about something. Seeing that the figure did not respond, the red-robed wizard continued, "Dear Sir William, we understand your feelings, but joining the Alliance is a very important matter for the future of Goth Institute. We need to consider it carefully, so please understand." William looked at the figure in the main seat and finally nodded helplessly. Allen did not care about the affairs of the Alliance. In his opinion, this kind of thing is a thankless task. It is better to improve the floating tower as soon as possible, build an element furnace, and let the floating city fly. When the floating city is successfully built, it will no longer be you who beg those people to join, but those people will cry and shout for joining. As the highest achievement of the Arcane Empire era, the floating city has always been the dream of all spellcasters. If R equals A, one sin, is the romance of mathematicians, then the floating city is the pursuit of arcane magicians. Therefore, if the floating city is built, those spellcasters who want to obtain this knowledge will join the Alliance unconditionally. There are several modes of the element furnace, which can be said to be a kind of magic nuclear energy. The most basic element furnace is element fission. In this process, when the element particle nucleus is bombarded by other element particles from outside, the element particle nucleus of the element fuel will absorb a foreign element particle, and then split into two element nuclei with smaller mass. In this process, 2 to 3 element particles will be released. These released element particles will continue to bombard other element particle nuclei, causing new fission. This continuous fission is called a chain reaction. A large amount of heat will be released in the chain reaction. If this heat is not controlled, it will explode in an instant, releasing a huge amount of light, heat, and radiation. Element fission is to collect this powerful energy and then output energy stably. The difficulty here is that during the chain reaction, the element particles will scatter in large quantities, which requires human guidance, because a chain reaction that is too fast will release all the energy in an instant, and the element furnace is likely to produce a violent explosion. Therefore, it is necessary to add a retarder during the element fission process to slow down the speed of the element particles, so that the element furnace can obtain stable and long-term energy, and then output it. Element fission is a primary version of the element furnace. The further element furnace is element fusion, which provides dozens or even hundreds of times more energy than element fission. This was also the earliest research during the Arcane Empire. The generation of element fusion has caused a huge change in the size of the floating city. Before this, most floating cities had a population of only 50,000 people, but after the success of element fission, the population size of the floating city directly exceeded 100,000. It is said that in the late Arcane Empire, there were already giant floating cities with a population of more than 300,000. The principle of element fusion is that under the conditions of high temperature, high pressure and high density, two element particle nuclei with smaller mass combine into a new element particle nucleus with larger mass, and huge energy will be released during this reaction process. This reaction mode is very similar to some stars. This energy is clean energy and does not produce radiation, but the process requirements far exceed element fission. It is too difficult to artificially create a reaction environment for element fusion. More importantly, there is very little information about element fusion left by the Arcane Empire. A standard floating city uses element fission element furnaces, which require about 3 to operate normally. 2 of them are used as normal energy supply, and the other is used as backup energy. Allen came to the storage room, took out a lot of resources, and prepared to conduct preliminary tests. The shell of the entire element furnace is made of magic steel, and various runes are attached to it for safety reasons. Because this is the first test, Allen is very slow. All the data are carefully recorded, and even problems are found during the construction process, and they are torn down and rebuilt. The chip and tower spirit number 1 are both operating at full capacity. As Allen closed the laboratory and built it bit by bit, the main structure of the element furnace was finally made over time. The main structure has been deduced hundreds of thousands of times. If you want to optimize and improve it again, you need to conduct experiments and collect data directly. The combustion chamber in the center uses a lot of rare materials such as star sand, arcane dust, gold, silver sand, etc. Allen is worried that the materials are not strong enough and will cause an explosion, so the materials on it are actually over the standard. Only after testing and collecting a lot of data calculations, the standard will be determined. As time goes by, the element furnace will be improved little by little. High-level magic shaping. Allen raised his staff, and a light golden aura emerged. Along with the spell aura, various materials on the enchantment table flew up directly. Various rare materials revolved around Allen. The energy channel of the element pool had been opened long ago, and the light blue energy was consumed rapidly. Element fusion. Pieces of magic steel melted quickly, and the dark blue flame appeared out of thin air. A large number of materials began to melt, and then blended with each other. The rune array carved on the ground rose with dazzling light. Star sand, arcane dust, silver sand, and many other materials were constantly burned by the flames. They melted in the flames, and then penetrated each other, and finally formed a ball of silver metal liquid emitting starlight. Then a light blue aura rose up, and the temperature around it dropped instantly, as if it had gone from the hot summer to the cold winter in an instant. The silver metal liquid slowly condensed into a light blue metal ingot. Allen reached out to take the metal ingot, checked it, and then breathed a sigh of relief. Then he followed the same process to manufacture it. A few days later, all the raw materials had been consumed, and piles of neatly arranged metal ingots were quietly stacked in the corner of the laboratory. Allen rubbed his swollen head, rested for a while, and then continued with the next step. Shaping. A metal ingot flew up directly, and then kept changing its shape like plasticine, and finally turned into parts in a flash of aura. Allen breathed a sigh of relief after blessing these parts with various spells. All the parts of the element furnace have been forged. Almost done. Start assembling now. With the help of the chip, Allen quickly assembled all the parts. The model of the element furnace has appeared in Allen's mind countless times, and he is already familiar with it. Finally, after 2 months of seclusion, the experimental version of the elemental furnace was completed. Chapter 420 Elemental Furnace 2. This is a silver white sphere as tall as a person, engraved with a large number of runes. It looks plain and simple. Allen waved his hand gently and put it away directly. Then he flashed and left the wizard tower. Allen did not intend to conduct the operation test of the element furnace in the wizard tower. Once there is a problem with this thing, there will be serious consequences, such as explosion, radiation, etc. Although he is confident that he can withstand it, his wizard tower does not want to be damaged. Allen's figure appeared in a desert. This is a continent located tens of thousands of miles south of the wizard continent. The element concentration of this continent is very low. Like his hometown, it belongs to the element deficient area. There is a huge desert here. After Allen came here, he took out the element furnace. There is a vast land and few people here. It is completely an uninhabited area. Even the animals around are pitiful. Even if the experiment fails and the element furnace explodes, the consequences are very limited. There will be no catastrophic consequences. Hardening technique *10. Allen directly used the hardening technique to sort out a piece of ground in the depths of this sea of death. Then he began to carve the rune array on the ground, and at the same time, set up the energy channel. As the sun gradually set, Allen rubbed his shoulders, and the last rune was engraved. After checking again, Allen took out the element furnace, and then installed it into the reserved card slot. After connecting the energy channel, he breathed a sigh of relief. Chip. Turn on the scanning mode and record the experimental data. Scanning mode is turned on. With a cold mechanical sound, an invisible light wave enveloped the surroundings. Allen opened the element furnace, then flipped his palm, and took out a piece of silver white metal. He carefully cut off a small piece from it, divided the small piece of metal into several parts, and then put it into the element furnace. Then Allen poured the retarder into it. The lavender retarder flickered with a faint light and quickly filled the reserved gap. After closing the element furnace, Allen took a deep breath, and a spiritual light rose. Advanced force field protection. Advanced wizard armor. Advanced energy shield. Dragon scale leather armor. Advanced bear tenacity. A series of spells were cast on him, and then Allen waved his staff again, and a beam of spiritual light shot out, and sank directly into the element furnace. As the element furnace was turned on, a huge amount of data flashed across Allen's eyes. The element furnace was ignited. Element fission began to run. Energy began to grow. Minor radiation was detected, which is lower than the safe value. Looking at the already running element furnace, Allen slowly breathed a sigh of relief. So far, the element furnace has been operating normally. Element fission continues, and energy begins to overflow. Open the energy channel. Connect the energy crystal. An energy channel slowly opened, and more than a dozen element crystals appeared around Allen. A surge of elemental energy gushed out through the element channel and directly entered the element crystal. The originally translucent energy crystal exuded a faint blue spiritual light. The energy visible to the naked eye quickly filled the energy crystals one by one. Compared with the energy of the element pool, the energy of the element furnace is much more violent and has strong radioactivity. Increase the power of the element furnace. Speed up the fission reaction. As Allen gave the order, the element furnace began to increase its power, and the energy output continued to increase. Soon, more than a dozen energy crystals were full. Allen waved his hand, and took out more than a dozen empty energy crystals to replace them. The element furnace was running at full capacity, and powerful energy continued to pour out. The energy crystals had no time to absorb it. Allen waved his staff, and a flash of light instantly connected the element and merged. The huge energy was directly controlled by Allen. With the staff waved, Allen easily released powerful spells one after another. With a light touch of the staff, a spring of water instantly spurted out from under the sand dunes in the distance, and then fountains emerged one after another around them. The spring water gathered into a small lake visible to the naked eye. Another flash of light, a large number of seeds were sprinkled, and the seeds took root and sprouted instantly after landing, and then quickly grew into towering trees. The sand dunes were covered with trees, and the springs gathered into lakes. In the blink of an eye, in the depths of this sea of death, Allen easily changed the environment and created a large oasis. 3 days later, Allen completed the preliminary test of the element furnace. The element furnace used for the test was a small element furnace. Its power was 3 to 5 times that of the element pool, which was suitable for installation in the floating tower. As for the floating city, it needed several times this kind of element furnace. This experiment was generally successful. The element furnace can work continuously and output energy stably, but there are still many problems. Allen needs to spend some time to optimize and improve the element furnace. There are still many flaws and hidden dangers in this element furnace, and the material used by Allen is good enough, so these small problems have been overcome. But if it is a large element furnace, these small problems may be the last straw that breaks the camel's back during operation. After several modification experiments, the element furnace finally met the requirements, and radiation filtering was added, and the energy output from it no longer carried radiation. Allen built an element furnace according to the new standards, and installed it in the floating tower. With the completion of the element furnace, the element pool has basically completed its mission. The functions of the two are very different. However, Allen did not intend to demolish it. He planned to transform it into a breeding room, to cultivate some magical beasts or magical plants. With the element furnace, the consumption of the golem army can be supplied, and those legendary constructs do not have to be thrown in the warehouse to gather dust. Artificial magic nets, maze locks, floating cities, etc. can all be put on the agenda. But he needs to take a break. Since returning to the wizard world, he has been busy with work during this period. Now that the element furnace has been completed, he can take a break for a while. After all, you can't get fat in one breath. The combination of work and rest is the kingly way. Moreover, he has not played games with his mates for a long time. Allen flipped through a spell book in the library, Advanced Battle Mage, on the 36 ways to bind shadow tentacles. Many of the things on it just opened Allen's eyes. It also highly recommended another book, The Art of Tentacles. However, Allen did not find this book. He plans to go to the Five Rings Tower next time and go to the Tower of Wisdom to look for it or communicate with other wizards. As for now, he plans to find Bis to study the 36 ways of binding shadow tentacles, and Selena will also join in. Chapter 421 Outsourcing Tasks. Five Rings Tower. When Allen returned here again, he felt a strong learning atmosphere. At this time, summer was coming to an end. Although the academy was like spring all year round, there were still some subtle changes. A lot of lost knowledge was obtained in the ruined city. The academy from top to bottom was immersed in research, wanting to absorb this knowledge as soon as possible and transform it into strength. Allen went directly to the task hall, where he had posted a lot of tasks. After paying the remaining rewards, he also paid some handling fees. Allen packed up the collected materials and took out a task list again. Do you still need to post tasks, Mr. Allen? Seeing a list, the witch smiled and said, why not? Allen smiled and nodded and handed over the task list. The required materials are all on it. You can help me post it in the task hall. Okay, please wait. The witch picked up the list and began to calculate the value of these items. To post tasks in the Five Rings Tower, you need to pay the task rewards in advance. As for how much to pay, it depends on your level in the academy. Sir Allen, your level is already the highest, so you don't need to pay a deposit for tasks with a value of less than 10,000 magic stones. The academy can pay for it. Your list does not exceed the limit, so you don't need to pay a deposit. The witch said with a smile after checking it. The tasks Allen posted here are medium difficulty tasks. The construction of the floating city requires many parts, and Allen will outsource some medium and low level parts in the form of tasks. After all, there is too much demand for these parts. If Allen relies on himself to make them, the construction of the floating city will become a lifetime series. And outsourcing these, he only needs to spend some resources, and a large number of low-level wizards will complete them quickly, accurately, and efficiently. In addition to these tasks, Allen posted the most collection tasks. The construction of the floating city requires a lot of resources, and Allen does not have time to collect them all. After all, many resources take a lot of time. For example, the 4 elemental essences are collected little by little from the active areas of the element. There is no shortcut. A 3rd level wizard apprentice can complete it, but it takes a long time. Elemental essences are widely present in the material plane and the elemental plane. They are used in large quantities in the refining of various magic items. Many wizard apprentices spend time collecting and selling them. Each unit of these elemental essences is worth half a magic stone. The price is not high, but it is laborious to collect. It is also because the Five Rings Tower has abundant human resources. It won't take long for these things to be collected in sufficient quantities. After leaving the mission hall, Allen came to the ecological park. As soon as he entered the ecological park, he immediately felt a natural force. This force was a little special. Unlike the power of wizards, this force was closer to nature and felt very similar to the energy in William. All the plants in the ecological park grew lushly, and even some magic plants that were difficult to cultivate became lush. And it seemed that this place had been purified. There was still some radiation in the ecological park before, but now these radiations have dropped to extremely low levels. If it weren't for the chip scan, it would be difficult to find. Druid? Could it be that Sir William spread the druid's practice method in the Five Rings Tower? Allen sensed the surrounding energy and then walked quickly towards the residential area. From a distance, Allen saw a tall tree. Oh no, it should be a tree shepherd. After getting closer, Allen found that the strength of this tree shepherd was already legendary. The number of tree shepherds is rare. Allen had only seen one once, when he was on a mission before, but his strength was not high. The life of a tree shepherd is very long, and his body looks like a tree. They live in various forests on the continent, and generally do not come out. The largest gathering place of tree shepherds on the wizard continent is in Fangorn Forest. The number of tree shepherds has always been small, and they rarely participate in the affairs of the outside world. Allen finally understood what that power is. This should be the power of the plant field. At this time, most wizard apprentices are in class, and there are not many people in the ecological park. Allen came to the treehouse area, and Lilith was planting something. Allen. Lilith seemed very happy to see Allen appear and waved and smiled at Allen from a distance. She looked a little taller than before. With fairy blood, she not only had delicate features, but also a special charm. Although her body was a little petite, she had a good figure and a special temptation of a lolly. Lilith, long time no see. Did you miss me? Allen smiled and walked up. Lilith, are you planting magic plants? Yes, during this period, Lord Finberhill came. His power can not only increase the survival rate of magic plants, but also accelerate the growth of magic plants. I'm taking this opportunity to plant more. Looking at Lilith with shining eyes, Allen was a little amused. He knew Lilith's little habit very well. Lilith liked to accumulate wealth. She planted a large number of magic plants in the ecological garden. Unlike many wizards who were often short of money, she was a rich woman in the Five Rings Tower. Except for those wizards who had wizard towers, there were few who surpassed her in wealth. Allen sometimes even suspected that Lilith had implanted the blood of a dragon. She even liked those shiny wealth more than Allen. No fairy would have such a hobby. Lord Finberhill? Is that the tree shepherd? Allen pointed to the direction of the tree shepherd in the distance. Yes. Lilith looked up at Allen and said, then she seemed to have noticed something, snapped her fingers, and her petite body floated up, floating to a position slightly higher than Allen, and then stopped with a hum. Allen looked at Lilith's movements with amusement. This position required him to raise his head slightly, but this position also revealed Lilith's majestic chest. Allen, you just came back, and don't know that Lord Finberhill's plant field is really amazing. Lilith said with envy. In the past, the survival rate of planting magic plants was only about 50%, but after Lord Finberhill came, the survival rate of all magic plants has become more than 90%, and the growth rate has increased by 3 times. If I had this field, it would be great. There are too many kinds of magic plants to count. How much wealth that would be. As she spoke, Lilith fell into her own fantasy, and her eyes became sparkling. Chapter 422, Academy Renovation. Lilith, wake up. Your saliva is flowing down. Wipe it quickly. Lilith raised her hand to wipe the saliva, but she reacted as soon as she raised her hand. She glared at Allen, who was snickering, and then ignored Allen, and turned around to continue planting magic plants. Seeing Lilith's expression, Allen smiled slightly and continued, what is the matter with Lord Finberhill coming here? Lord William invited him here. I don't know the details. Lilith said casually. At this time, a hurried figure rushed over quickly, and after seeing Allen, he immediately said, Lord Allen, I heard that you are back. Dean Alfred asked you to come over. I know. Looking at the somewhat hurried wizard, Allen nodded, then greeted Lilith, and flew directly to the tower using the flying spell. Wizard Tower, Astronomical Observatory. When Allen came here, a large group of academic wizards were busy, and the originally neat astronomical observatory now looked like a construction site. Many energy channels on the ground were dug up, and some runes were being re-engraved. Allen walked around the busy crowd, and passed through an energy protection barrier. He saw Alfred carving something on the central crystal of the tower spirit. Mr. Dean. Mr. Allen is here. Alfred turned around and said, come and see the latest achievements of our Five Rings Tower. Alfred pointed to the central crystal of the tower spirit in front of him. Allen walked forward and took a look. It was a legendary tower spirit, which looked familiar. Is this the tower spirit in the ruined city? Allen pointed to the central crystal in front of him and said, yes, it is indeed the tower spirit in the ruined city. Alfred smiled and nodded. We found that the tower spirit of the ruined city is more advanced than the tower spirit of the Five Rings Tower. After resetting it, a new tower spirit was regenerated and then installed here. After obtaining the knowledge in the ruins, we are upgrading the protective barrier of the Five Rings Tower to a puzzle lock. The original tower spirit is no longer enough. Allen also admired the wizards of the Five Rings Tower. It is not easy to upgrade the protective barrier to a puzzle lock. Not only does it cost a lot of resources, but many energy channels need to be modified. The workload is very high. Allen has also studied puzzle locks, and he knows the complexity of puzzle locks. Just like the gap between commercial supercomputers and supercomputing centers used by national scientific research, Allen wanted to upgrade the protective barrier of the Wizard Tower to a puzzle lock, but after calculating the workload, he gave up temporarily because it was too much for him alone. He planned to upgrade the protective barrier to a puzzle lock when the floating city was built. Only half of the ruins have been sorted out now, and there are still many things to be sorted out. If you have time, Sir Alan can go and sort them out and take a look. Alfred said casually. I will. Alan, I asked you to come here this time because of the request of Sir William. He asked us to share the knowledge in the ruins with Tibis. This is one of the conditions for our alliance. I think it is acceptable. Alan nodded and agreed. I agree, but the knowledge in the ruins needs to be sorted out before we can share it with the world of Tibis. And Sir William also contributed when we explored the ruins. It is a very reasonable request. Alan nodded and said, since it has been decided to share it with Tibis, there are also the Wizard Alliance and the Northland Witches. Alfred continued, the alliance is just established and is still very fragile. It can't withstand any storms. I plan to share knowledge with them as well. Since the Northland Witches and the Wizard Alliance have already joined, we can't treat them differently. But after all, they didn't contribute, and they can't just sit back and enjoy the fruits of their labor. I think they need to give something as compensation. Alan thought for a while and continued. It should be so. You have to pay for what you want. This is fair. Alfred nodded and agreed. Mr. Dean, I'm going to place the plane gate connecting to Tibis in the academy. Where do you think it should be placed? Plane gate. I'll mark out an area for placement. Alfred nodded and agreed. The plane gate connecting to Tibis was placed in the academy. Even if something happened in Tibis when he was away, the other wizard organizations and the alliance would have ways to support it, and they wouldn't have to wait until Alan came back. Where has Sir William been during this time? Sir William is still at the Goth Institute. The Goth Institute's attitude is a bit ambiguous now, and it hasn't specifically said it would join the alliance. Speaking of the Goth Institute, Alfred's face was a bit bad. They are raising their own status and want to gain greater benefits. Alan pouted and said, I think so too. They want to have a higher voice in the alliance. Alfred nodded and said, they are dreaming. If they don't join now, when the floating city flies up, they won't have such good conditions to join. Alan said with a chuckle. How far has the research on the element furnace progressed in the academy? Thanks to the information from Tibis and the ruined city, the research on the element furnace has been completed for the most part. Now there are still some problems that have not been solved. In 3 years at the fastest and 5 years at the slowest, we will solve the problem of the element furnace. Speaking of the element furnace, Alfred's eyes were full of longing. After all, for wizards, the floating city has only existed in legends for thousands of years. Even many wizards regard this floating city as a product of the imagination of ancient wizards. Now this fantasy is about to appear before his eyes. When Alfred thought of this, he felt a surge of emotion. Alan did not disturb Alfred's imagination. It seems that the research on the element furnace of the Five Rings Tower is progressing very quickly. However, since it has not been successful yet, he is ready to talk to Alfred about the element furnace. Sorry, I was distracted just now. Alfred, who came back to his senses, apologized quickly. It's okay. Alan waved his hand to show that he didn't mind. Mr. Dean, I want to talk to you about the element furnace. Alan said after a moment of hesitation. Elemental furnace? Alan, are you planning to build a floating city? No problem. Once the elemental furnace is completed, as a member of the academy, you will be eligible to order one from the academy. I will give you a cost price. Alfred said, waving his hand with an expression that said, I know everything. Chapter 423, Selling Goods to Two Families. Sir, that's not what I meant. Hearing Alfred's words, his mouth twitched, and then he said directly with a blank expression, I have researched the element furnace and built one. You studied the element furnace. I know that. I also studied. What? You succeeded. Say it again. Alfred looked incredible. He also participated in the research of the element furnace and had a deep understanding of the heart of this floating city. He was very clear about the complexity of the element furnace. It involved dozens of disciplines such as materials science, runes, element fission, energy conversion, force field science, element annihilation science, etc. The entire Five Rings Tower was completely obtained after a large amount of information was obtained, and all forces were gathered to achieve some results. If it were not for the information in Tibus and the ruined city, it would take decades to achieve some results with the Five Rings Tower alone. It was precisely because he knew his difficulty that Alfred was shocked by Allen. I have researched the element furnace, Allen said again. Taking a few deep breaths, Alfred tried to calm his excitement, but he failed after trying several times. Is this true? I'm not dreaming. Floating city. Floating city. The new era of wizard civilization is about to begin in our hands. Alfred walked back and forth here excitedly, muttering to himself. It took a long time for Alfred to regain his composure. Sorry, I lost my composure a little. Understandable. Allen looked at the old man with an embarrassed expression and smiled slightly. He didn't expect that the dean, who was always known for his majesty and wisdom, would have such a side. Okay, let's continue with the issue of the element furnace. Alfred coughed and continued. Sir Allen, what are you going to do? What does the Five Rings Tower need to pay to get the technology of the element furnace? Alfred was very sober and did not ask Allen to directly take out the information of the element furnace. Even if the academy wanted to obtain this knowledge, it could only be exchanged at an equal value. This is the rule of the wizard world. Allen has already weighed the sale of the element furnace technology. Even if Allen does not sell it, the Five Rings Tower will research it in a few years. It is better to take advantage of it now. Rare resources, various knowledge, and I need the manpower of the academy to help me complete the construction of the floating city. Allen directly stated his conditions. Okay. Alfred nodded in agreement, and then the two began to discuss specific matters. Allen soon sold the information of the element furnace to the academy. They were very happy to get what they wanted, but the element furnace technology was only elementary. Allen did not mention the subsequent element fusion and element annihilation. This elementary element furnace can only build a low-level floating city. This time, it was because he wanted to quickly enhance his strength to deal with the abyss, so he sold it directly. As for the subsequent information, Allen would not take it out easily. He planned to wait until he made some advanced element furnaces for sale in the future, or act as an arms dealer when traveling to other planes. After all, Allen's goal is the Starry Sea, not just the 3 acres of the wizard world. Leaving the astrological table, Allen returned to his residence in the ecological park. Allen rarely lives here. Usually, 2 of Allen's apprentices live here. As Allen's apprentices, Allen does not pay much attention to them, but Allen will still guide them whenever he has time. After several years of study, the 2 apprentices have finally reached the 3rd level wizard apprentice. Now they need to face the threshold of crossing the formal wizard. If they succeed, they will become a formal wizard. If they fail, they need to continue to accumulate and wait for the next opportunity. However, it is also possible to remain silent. Every failure to break through will cause great damage to their own mental power and soul. The next breakthrough will be more difficult for you. After 3 failures, there is basically no hope of promotion. Allen prepared a spell for them to advance, and then gave them a copy of the experience he collected. As for whether they succeed or not, they need to work hard on their own. After staying in the academy for a while, Allen only explained the knowledge of the element furnace to those academy wizards during this time. After all, he had agreed. It took more than a month for Allen to finally hand over this knowledge to the Five Rings Tower, and then return to the Wizard Tower in the Southeast Sea area with a large number of resources. This time, several wizards from the Five Rings Tower came with them. Their main task was to bring back the plane door connecting to Tibis. But before that, Allen needed to communicate with Tibis again. He was going to sell the information of the elemental furnace to Tibis, or rather share it, and Tibis would provide some resources to support Allen's research. Well, Allen was just shameless, and sold the goods to 2 parties. Arriving at the astrological table of the Wizard Tower, he ordered Tower Spirit number 1 to open the plane gate. This time, when the plane gate was opened, Allen found that the energy consumed was much more than before. It seemed that the abyss had eroded Tibis a little more. The elemental furnace provided stable and abundant energy. Under the powerful energy, the plane gate broke through the interference of the abyss will and opened the channel connecting to the world of Tibis. At the same time, in the world of Tibis, the city of Arcane, a tall obsidian gate stood in the central square, and several high-level spellcasters were always waiting around the gate. Suddenly, a faint spiritual light emanated from the obsidian gate, which suddenly awakened the several spellcasters guarding it. The plane gate has responded. Quickly notify Lord Obsis and Lord Dalfort. Element pool number 3 is activated. Energy channel is open. Activate the plane gate. As the energy of the element pool poured in, a ray of light rose from the plane gate. The powerful elemental energy instantly tore through the plane shield and directly connected to the elemental gate of the wizard world. Obsis and Alfred, who received the news, came here quickly. Allen saw that the plane gate was connected, and the surrounding space was restored to stability. Then he put a communication crystal on it. Then a ray of light rose, and the communication crystal appeared in the world of Tibis. Allen picked up another communication crystal. A ray of light flashed in his hand. The communication crystal was instantly activated, and a round screen appeared in front of him. This communication crystal, which uses advanced communication books and mirroring techniques, can allow people thousands of miles away to have face-to-face conversations. It is a new product that was upgraded not long ago. The previous communication crystal could only make voice calls. The screen twisted a few times before gradually stabilizing. Although the space channel opened by the plane gate was used to connect, the communication crystal was still strongly disturbed. The picture was not stable. Allen flicked his finger to add aura, slightly adjusted the plane gate a few times, and the communication crystal was finally usable. "Hello, Mr. Allen. It's nice to meet you," Obsis said directly the moment he saw Allen. "Mr. Obsis, long time no see. This time I opened the plane gate because my research has made a breakthrough, which is of great help to both Tibis and the wizard world. But you also know that research is very resource intensive. I think in exchange, you can support my research," Allen said to Obsis seriously. Obsis' eyes lit up, and then he looked at Alfred. After the two exchanged glances, they nodded in agreement. Chapter 424 I don't want to be named. Sir Allen, please make a list of the resources you need, and we will prepare them later. Obsis nodded. Okay, I will send my research results and the list together. Allen picked up the prepared energy storage crystal and placed it on the plane gate. A ray of light rose, and the energy storage crystal disappeared. This is the complete blueprint of the element furnace. You should study it as soon as possible, and then hurry up to build it. I look forward to seeing you next time, and your arcane city will fly successfully. Allen winked and smiled at Obsis. Although he was mentally prepared, Obsis still couldn't control his emotions. He forced himself to suppress his excitement. Obsis expressed his gratitude again, and then said that the resources would be prepared as soon as possible. Only then did he end the call and close the plane gate. A day later, the plane gate opened again, and a batch of rare resources were transmitted through the plane gate. It took Allen a day to dismantle the plane gate from the wizard tower, and then let these wizards take it back. It would be difficult for Allen to collect these rare materials obtained through exchange, but it was not too difficult for the Arcane Council of Tibis. After all, there were more than a dozen legendary high-level spellcasters who personally took action. The morning sun cast a layer of brilliance. Allen rubbed his eyes, then pulled away the arms entangled on his body, got up and went to the bathroom to take a shower. As Allen's dragon blood entered adulthood, he felt that his desires became stronger and stronger. And because of the dragon vein, his physical fitness has grown to an extremely exaggerated level. With the growth of physical fitness, human abilities will also improve. So Allen, whose endurance is now comparable to that of a dragon, has become extremely powerful in one aspect. Ordinary humans can't satisfy him at all, and the maids around him can't bear it alone. So every time there are several maids together, and even so, the number of these maids is still increasing. Allen even uses spells to improve, but the blood of the divine dragon is too strong. Allen feels that it may not be long before he needs to find some succubi, lust demons, and dragons to be maids. When male creatures are doing some beneficial activities, the most pleasant moment is only a short moment, and because of their strong bodies, it is difficult for them to enter the state. Allen used some other means, often needing spells to cooperate, and only when they are physically and psychologically satisfied can they enter the state. This usually requires high-intensity exercise, which ordinary human women cannot bear at all. This is the price of being too strong. Therefore, among high-level wizards, their tastes are relatively special. Some overly rational wizards will even completely give up this demand, such as transforming into elemental bodies or liches. It is correct not to use humans as maids. After all, human physical fitness is too weak and not durable at all, and it is easy to be broken. It is said that succubus and lust demons are the most durable in the multiverse. Allen thinks that he should experience it if he has the opportunity. If it is good, he will catch a few back. Allen also feels that if the price of being strong is to give up this enjoyment, then this kind of strength will become boring. Even this most basic pleasure is no longer attained, then what is the meaning of pursuing strong power? After taking a shower, Allen put on his clothes. On the table in the living room was a breakfast, a large plate of barbecue, a cup of honey blended drink, a piece of cake, an omelette made of flamingo eggs, and a fruit platter. There were also some snacks and buns on the plate next to it, which Allen specially gave to the maids to make. All the food was made from magical beasts or magical plants. The ecological park of the Wizard Tower has domesticated a large number of magical beasts that can be used. Allen now has higher requirements for food, and dragons are big eaters. After a hearty breakfast, Allen lay on a comfortable recliner and began to read. The green tea carefully prepared by the maidbus next to him filled his nose with a faint tea fragrance. After a while, the door was pushed open and Selena's slender figure appeared. "Master, sit down." Allen lazily pointed to the place next to him and said. Selena sat on it naturally and then stretched out her hand to massage Allen. "Master, the first batch of magical pearls has been formed and the quality is good." Selena reported the work in a soft voice. Now most of the work in the Wizard Tower is done by Allen's maids, especially these mermaid maids, because each of them is a blood wizard with strong spellcasting ability and can handle many things. Bus is no longer in charge of the affairs of the Wizard Tower. She is now in charge of the factory and material transportation in Callan City. After all, her profession is a shadow assassin. In addition to some spell-like abilities, she cannot cast spells. Alex and Douglas have awakened. The two little guys have now reached level 2 in strength. They have entered adulthood quite fast. Allen nodded and continued. "Let Tower Spirit number 1 assign them some tasks to prevent them from making trouble in the ecological park every day." "How are the dwarves doing?" Allen picked up the teacup and took a sip. The slightly bitter tea passed over the tip of his tongue, and then he swallowed it, and a trace of sweetness filled his mouth. "The dwarves work very seriously and very diligently. Although they look a little ugly, they can always complete the tasks assigned to them very well." "Master, where did you find these slaves?" Selena asked with some curiosity. "Another world," Allen said casually. "Is it the world I lived in before?" Selena said with some interest. "Yes, basically similar." Allen nodded. The previous world did have similarities with the Caribbean world, but there were fewer supernatural powers in the Caribbean world. The Obsidian Golem factory is operating normally. It just completed its self-inspection last week. I have checked and found no problems. Now the Obsidian Golem factory has produced more than 900 Obsidian Golems. The raw material workshop has produced a large amount of various resources, which are now stored in the material warehouse in the demi-plane. What is the yield rate of the golem production line now? Allen changed his position to make himself lie more comfortably, and at the same time, put his legs on Selena's thighs. Selena began to massage skillfully. The yield rate of the golem production line has reached 97%, and the unqualified golem puppets have been dismantled and remade. Chapter 425, Floating City Phase I Project. Demi-plane, Atlantis. This legendary city of Poseidon has now become a huge construction site. Allen is going to transform this city of Poseidon into his own floating city. Although it has gone through thousands of years, the city is still well preserved. As the capital of the kingdom of Atlantis, this city has received the blessing of Poseidon, and there is still some power of Poseidon in the city today. These remaining powers of Poseidon have been integrated with the city. With the blessing of Poseidon, the city has magical power. The city is very strong, and the ground is like steel. Allen is going to bless the city with hardening magic to further increase its strength. The floating city needs to sail in the astral world, so it must be strong enough when built. The construction standard of the floating city during the Arcane Empire was to withstand a legendary spell. Even if it collides with an asteroid in the astral world, it is the asteroid that is shattered. After the hardening technique, Atlantis has surpassed this standard, but Allen did not transform the entire Atlantis into a floating city. The city is too big. Allen only separated the essence of the entire city. That is the center of the city of Poseidon. This is a circular central area with a radius of 3 kilometers. The palace, the great temple, the central square, and most of the noble areas are here, but these buildings need further reconstruction. The location of the Great Temple is the center of the entire city. It needs to be completely transformed. Allen's Wizard Tower needs to be placed here. The golden statue of Poseidon, which is more than 100 meters high, has been moved by Allen. The Great Temple is a Gothic building. Allen is going to move the temple as a whole. The noble area has also been replanned. Many buildings will be demolished and then transformed into residential areas. This will become the residence of Allen's followers in the future. After all, a city cannot be just Allen and his maids. The palace also needs to be renovated. Allen plans to transform it into a comprehensive college. It will not only have wizard heritage, but also a large comprehensive college including spellcasters, warriors, wanderers, alchemists and many other derivative professions. In the future, Allen will continue to provide followers. Next to the palace area, a research center will be built to study various knowledge and technologies. At the same time, a library will be built here. The floating city is not simply flying a city. It involves many technologies. There are at least 3 layers of protection for the floating city alone. The first layer is a super large energy protection barrier. This energy protection barrier can completely wrap the entire city. It acts like an atmosphere, completely isolating the floating city from the outside world, but it is much stronger than the atmosphere. This energy barrier is required to withstand the impact of asteroids, resist various energy radiations from the outside world, and maintain the ecological balance of the floating city. Because the floating city is an independent ecosystem, the wind, rain and other climates here are controlled by humans, simulating the living environment of the material plane to the greatest extent. After all, not everyone can move freely in the astral world like wizards. The second is the maze lock, which is a combination of strategic strikes, attack, and defense. The last one is the defense of the floating city itself. When the floating city is transmitted as a whole, it is under extremely terrible pressure because of its huge size. If it is not hard enough, it will collapse directly in the space crack. The floating city has an independent ecosystem and needs to be completely self-sufficient, including gravity, precipitation, air, light, and heat. Allen is going to build a gravity ring. Contrary to the floating ring, the gravity ring can change the gravity in an area. At the same time, it is also a must-have for the training ground. However, Allen needs a large earth element heart. Allen can do general gravity transformation, but this kind of influence on the scope of a city requires earth element. After all, they are experts in controlling gravity. Rainfall Allen has the artifact of Poseidon, so there is no need to worry about it. He also has a group of mermaid maids who can naturally manipulate water element. Some artificial lakes need to be built in the floating city to assist the flow of water in the floating city. Wind and air require several atmospheric expansion chambers to be built around the floating city, which are also lung chambers. The main function here is to exchange air, convert oxygen and carbon dioxide, and also be responsible for the air circulation in the floating city. The lung chamber will create some breezes to keep the air in the floating city flowing. Light and temperature. Allen is going to make an artificial sun. There are currently 2 options for artificial suns. One is to install it on the top of the wizard tower. Allen will refine a magic item and then connect it to the energy pool. It will continue to emit light, but Allen imagined the picture in his mind. The picture of a big light bulb installed on the wizard tower is too beautiful, so Allen directly denied it. The second option is to build a sun hanging in the sky, and it is not only a lighting tool, but also a monitoring device that can monitor the entire floating city 24 hours a day. The temperature of the floating city. Allen is going to go to the higher fire element heart on the fire element plane to build a constant temperature magic array in the floating city. These will constitute the ecosystem of the floating city. Allen plans to create an auxiliary tower spirit to control this system. In Allen's design, Allen installed tens of thousands of monitoring arrays in the city. These arrays will continuously obtain various information parameters around them, such as air, temperature, humidity, light intensity, water flow, oxygen concentration, element concentration, etc. Then they are summarized and passed to the tower spirit, and then the tower spirit makes corresponding adjustments after analysis. It will rain when it should rain, and it will blow when it should blow. This ecological system maintains the ecological balance of the floating city, allowing ordinary people to live here. With these, the floating city can drift in the star world for a long time, and the star world is very dangerous. The floating city must also have strong armaments and defenses. There are tens of thousands of kinds of knowledge involved in the establishment of a floating city, and a lot of manpower support is needed to build it. However, Allen has reached an agreement with the Five Rings Tower. The Academy will provide a large number of wizards to help with the construction. Allen's main task now is to build a connecting structure in the city, to connect Allen's wizard tower with the city, and at the same time, separate the floating city from Atlantis. The foundation of the city needs to lay various energy pipelines, and the floating ring also needs to be erected. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.